in Europe, if approved, if Starmer bows down to Beijing, as these protesters are saying. Behind me you can see nobody wants this.
No repression at borders! We know that we have to stand up to the abuses of China. And what worries me is that we have a government right now that seems to be scared of China.
What are you doing here at the protest? That's an interesting sign you've got there. Clearly you're not a fan of our Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Why is that?
He's kowtowing to the Chinese government, right? A dictator regime.
Robert Jenrick defected to Reform yesterday. He called the Conservative Party and Kemi Badenoch a leader with no backbone. She's obviously shown up here today and done a speech. It's kind of unprecedented to have that sort of flagrant support. What did you think about her speech and her backing this?
I think any party backing our cause, like going against the building of the embassy, I'd say we welcome them.
Why are you here today?
So I'm Tibetan and I'm here to oppose the Chinese mega embassy being built here. Unfortunately, we think the UK government might allow this to happen, and I think it sends the wrong message to people who have been oppressed by the Chinese government, who are still being continuously oppressed in free countries. There are lots of Chinese decisions which are being followed by Chinese police states.
Now, we know that there are plainclothes Chinese policemen potentially in the crowd, so a lot of them want to stay anonymous, which is very understandable. Why are you here today?
Because it's very simple. It's no mega embassy, and it is absolutely unacceptable because this is a very peak area, and I don't think any one of the country they will have choose one of the peak area, prime area, and make it to their one of the I think it's the biggest embassy in Europe. So this is absolutely unacceptable.
This government is engaging with China confidently and pragmatically and challenging them where we need to. Because for our security...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side, this is Talk.
Past 6. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle. Fantastic to have your company. A big 4 hours to come. And generation jobless as Britain's youth unemployment, I should say, becomes the highest in Europe. So have Labour reawakened the old enemy of unemployment? Has the party of working people put us out of work? And could it be U-turn number 17 as Labour consider rowing back plans to increase the minimum wage for young workers? And what about this fresh brainwave? 9 million people suffering from anxiety, whatever that is, are going to get therapy on the NHS to encourage them back to work. What do you think needs to happen to encourage Brits to re-engage with the economy? Speaking of the economy, we're expecting the inflation figures at 7 a.m. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is resisting extra spending on defence. So is the UK now less safe under this Labour government? And a group of British Chagossians return to their home islands. So is that deal to give away the Chagos Islands, is it dead in the water? And Reform UK announce their lineup for power. Can Reform UK's new team save Britain? My priority for the next 4 hours is to get your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Pick up the phone. Damien's on the switchboard this morning. Can Reform's new team save Britain? And how do we get young people back into the workplace? Let me know your thoughts. I want to hear your stories of the real economy. Tell me about your situation. Tell me how the cost of living is impacting you. Have you got kids that you aren't able to find a job for? Let me know what's going on. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. 6:05, and let's have a look at today's front pages. We start with the Daily Telegraph newspaper. Reeves blocking defence cash boost. This, I think, is a big concern. Military chiefs sound alarm over £28 billion shortfall as funding requests are rejected. Also, Romeo repaid travel expenses after billing taxpayer. This would be the incoming most senior member of the civil service, the cabinet secretary. The person that's tipped to become that is Dame Antonia Romeo, who initially claimed money from the taxpayer to cover a string of flights between New York, where she was living, and London, where her new civil service role was based, in 2017. She later decided to pay the money from her own pocket to avoid it becoming an issue as she progressed her career. Also in the Telegraph, Chagos Islanders back after 50 years of exile. And as I mentioned, NHS to give therapy to 9 million in joblessness push. Times newspaper, Labour may drop youth wage pledge to boost jobs. And 4 times more women than men are on the weight jabs. Daily Express, millions are crying out for reward of hard work. Labour was branded the silent killer of aspiration as the jobless rate hit 5.2%. Youth unemployment, the highest in the whole of Europe. Daily Mail now, pressure piles on Andrew as fourth police force probes Epstein claims, and Tanner Ramsey reveals heart-to-heart with PT mum before feud. The Sun newspaper, cops in Andy sex probe. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was last night facing a criminal probe into sex trafficking claims. At least 7 police forces are examining new evidence from the Jeffrey Epstein files. Essex police are assessing claims that women were flown to Stansted on his Lolita Express private jet. Well, that is a concern, because it seems that those people coming in on private jets into the UK are not subjected to the same checks and balances as you and I when we're flying in from Alicante on a Ryanair flight. Daily Mirror now, reform jokers are dangerous, say the Mirror. No laughing matter. Grinning Nigel Farage unveiled his top team yesterday, full of Tory turncoats who have already trashed Britain once. The Reform UK leader, Robert Jenrick, Suella Braverman, Richard Tice and Zia Youssef have been appointed to key roles amid warnings that they could damage the economy, the NHS, hard-won workers and equality rights. Labour chair Anna Turley said they failed Britain before. They'll do so again. OK, well, there's a few things to say here. Did the incredibly woke, incredibly left-wing Mirror not get the memo that it's this Labour government that are destroying Britain? Do they need me to quote youth unemployment, which is now the highest in all Europe? Do they need me to quote the fact that this Labour government have reawoken the old enemy of unemployment? We didn't have unemployment for a generation. And now Labour are in, the party of working people, who are out of work. And the Mirror think that reform are the problem. The Mirror are worried, Christian, that Reform UK are going to trash the economy. What would that look like? Would that be like low growth? Would that be the highest debt in our history? Would that be the highest taxes since the war? Would that be higher borrowing costs than after Liz Truss's mini budget? Would that be sticky inflation, which is almost double the Bank of England's target? Is that what they're worried that reform will do? Because that's what Rachel Reeves has done. And this awful Labour government, who in my view have made everything worse. but it's only my opinion. What do you think? If you want to defend Labour, give me a call. Let's have a right old ding-dong. 6:09, Talk Breakfast, live in the studio. Broadcaster, historian and man about town, Rafe Hadelman-Koo. Good morning.
Good morning.
So good to see you. And listen, let's get to this story about youth unemployment. It's a tragedy for the young people involved, a headache for our economy and a nightmare for our society.
Indeed, we all famously know that Labour always leaves government with unemployment higher than when they started. It seems as if Starmer's government are trying to tick that box off as soon as they can. Devastating. When you think that Labour has made such a big deal about trying to lift people out of poverty, improve their life chances, all of their policies have actually done just the opposite. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. And this is exactly what small businesses and others have warned them would happen if they were going to embark upon these crazy policies. We still have the Workers' Rights Act to come into force.
Disaster.
Which is going to be even more of a burden. And I mean, some of the headlines
comes
into
force today.
Yeah, and some of the headlines here are quite remarkable. You know, this is the first time since records began that unemployment in this country amongst the youth is higher than in Europe. And the reason we were always a beacon for youth employment was because we weren't burdened by these socialist policies that the European Union always did. And we have that, of course. We've had a 33% rise in the minimum wage over the last 2 years for people aged 18 to 20. That's why they can't get jobs anymore. It's simply not economically viable for that. And of course, all of this deterioration in jobs has happened as the Chancellor has basically had a £25 billion rise in national insurance contributions. And it just boggles the mind that we have entrusted the economy to people who are so incompetent, and a party that's supposed to lift up the poorest is actually creating a lost generation of youth. An absolute shambles. And as Alan Milburn, the former health minister under Tony Blair in New Labour, has said, 45% of those people 24 and under who are not in education and training have never had a job in their lives. What an indictment.
It's a huge indictment. And is there any defence that can be made of this Labour government that somehow there's a plan and what's happening here is that things are getting worse before they get better? Is there a defence to be made that what they're doing, they've had to increase taxes to fill those black holes, to invest in public services, get the waiting list down? Is that a defence?
It's not a defence at all when you see measures like this. I mean, this again is putting ideology ahead of common sense, ahead of business reality. And you can see why this has happened, of course. Once again, you have the backbenchers, of course, who have basically been bribed. So the lifting of the two-child benefit cap, at huge cost to the taxpayer, that was a bribe, a bung to keep Starmer's backbenchers on side.
Can we stop saying that 500,000 children have been lifted out of poverty? That is snake oil. That is disingenuous. It's a lie. Handing money to people does not lift children out of poverty. There's no evidence that there's a correlation between this handout to parents and what actually happens to the fate of the kids. And also the concern you've got is that actually a lot of that money will be wasted. It's not targeted at all. And you know, so what do you think about that statistic?
Yeah, I agree with you entirely, but that goes to the bigger picture here. The front bench, and in fact all Labour benches, are, you know, there is nobody there who has any business experience of managing big corporations. These are ideological individuals who have seen 14 years of austerity and cuts and said, those evil Tories, look what they're doing, hammering the poor and everything. Yeah, you can make a good argument for that. But they said, well, we must do just the opposite when we get into power, not thinking about every other Labour government had done just the same thing with exactly the same result. As Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, hoping for a different result. Well,
indeed. I mean, and we're going to look keenly at the the inflation figures which come out at 7 a.m. today. But there just isn't much hope for the economy in the next couple of years, is there?
There's no hope at all. I mean, you want to give people hope, obviously. Look, this is the government of U-turns. What really sticks in my craw is here, a government source, having been told about all of this and deciding to potentially drop the youth wage pledge, have said, oh, well, the youth unemployment figures rising has strengthened the case for a rethink. Really, really, thanks Einstein for that. You know, there's no point increasing minimum pay for young workers if they haven't got the jobs to go to. I mean, this is outrageous stuff to be coming out from people who are paid a great salary to try to lead this nation out of the dire situation in which we're in. There is nobody who seems to have a clue how to get us out of this abyss and into those broad sunlit uplands that we were promised.
Most definitely. The reason why we've had now upwards potentially of 16 or 17 U-turns is because the ideas of this government are bad ideas and they don't work.
Well, you said it perfectly. How can I improve on that? Precisely that. We have had a government that has been experimenting with policies that have been proven time and time again not to work. And yet this is what happens when you put ideology ahead of the real world people's lives. You are playing games with people's lives, and this has been done not without any warnings. We've had the CBI, we've had the Federation of Small Businesses, all warning that this would happen. 45% of employers have said that, or small companies said that they're recruiting fewer workers because of these changes. And it's only in the 11th hour always that the Labour Party suddenly starts to listen to all of this. I'm sorry, it's too little and too late.
And have you known a government in history with such a handsome majority to govern as though it were not in power, as though it had a slender majority or even a hung parliament?
This is a government that doesn't know what it wants. This is a government that knows deep down it didn't win this election. The Tory party lost this election. They were basically a repository of votes that were anti-Tory, and you can see that from how slim their majorities are. In the past, you had stonking majorities, and they had big margins there. That doesn't happen this time. I think they know that they're treading water, and they're trying to do everything they can not to put off the small number of people who did vote for them.
Most definitely. Front page of The Sun, Rafe. Cops in Andy sex probe. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was last night facing a criminal probe into sex trafficking claims. At least 7 police forces are examining new evidence from the Jeffrey Epstein files. Essex police are assessing claims that women were flown to Stansted on his Lolita Express private jet.
Yeah, no fewer than 90 flights were basically believed to have taken off during those flights from Stansted. At least 15 of those after Epstein was released from prison. As you said, this is just the latest one. Surrey Police is also believed to be looking into seeking unredacted files in relation to another abuse allegation against him. There are so many police forces now involved in this that they've actually joined up forces, and there's now a national coordination group just to deal with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. This has been announced by the National Police Chiefs Council, where they're going to basically be going to the states and asking them to give them the unredacted files. We, of course, know Thames Valley Police currently have 2 investigations ongoing. Yeah. One about misconduct in public office, which could also involve the Official Secrets Act and the National Security Act. 2 of those things have a life imprisonment option there for the highest levels of things. And also, of course, Thames Valley Police also dealing with the issue of sex trafficking into this country. And, of course, Andrew is alleged to have taken girls into Royal Lodge and potentially into Buckingham Palace, which would mean that now for the first time royal residences could fall under police investigation. This is dire stuff, you know. And when Andrew was sent to Sandringham, everyone thought that's going to be it. He'll spend the rest of his time in the wilderness, in exile. He's in more trouble now than at any point up to now.
Most definitely. Good morning, Mark, says Sean. We need an election to get this government out. We can't afford them any longer. We're being squeezed ever tighter, and we are at bursting point. Well, something that Nigel Farage says on a regular basis is he thinks the election will be sooner rather than later. He anticipates potentially next year, 2027, maybe because of an economic event, a potential economic crash. Is he right about that? Dave says, good morning, Mark. Once again, you failed to mention everything that Labour have achieved. Free breakfast clubs. Well said, Dave. You're absolutely right. That's all they cling on to, isn't it? Lifting 500,000 children out of poverty, no. Handing cash to families is not the same thing. You're listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. Let's take a voice note now.
Morning, Mark and Sari. So we used to employ a young person alongside a local college every 2 years to train them to be an industrialist individual. Firstly, it is now far too expensive. Secondly, there are too many rules governing employing somebody who we spend most of our time telling to get off their phone. And thirdly, we're expected to treat them like a child. The rules in place are, I'm loco parentis. We have to answer silly questions from the college every 12 weeks, about the young person's personal life as well, which I'm really not interested in, to be quite frank. So not just this government, but the government before have turned employing anyone under the age of 21 into a total, I'm trying to think of a nice word, nightmare. Thank you.
That is the word, Anna. Thank you for the first voice note of the morning, and a brilliant one it was. Andy from Cheddar. Good morning, Mark. Maybe the unemployed youth should get a job in politics. It seems like the government will take any idiot, regardless of experience. Well, it is 6:19. You're listening to Talk Breakfast. Will Reform's new team save Britain? That's next.
I have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America.
That is why I said the use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong.
You know, the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way.
Any decision about the future status of Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:22, you're listening to Talk Breakfast. Happy Wednesday, one and all. Mark Dolan with you till 10 a.m. Julia up after that. And Reform UK yesterday announced their lineup of stars to save Britain, including Zia Youssef as the Shadow Home Secretary, Robert Jenrick as Shadow Chancellor, and Richard Tice in charge of business and energy. So some interesting appointments. Suella Braverman, of course, is going to tear up diversity, equity and inclusion, as well as sort out education. Rafe Hadel-Manku, can Reform UK's new team save Britain?
Well, they're certainly off to a good start with this lineup, I would say. Look, we need to speak here about Suella Braverman and Jenrick, because I know some people are uneasy with Tories coming over to the Reform Party, but I think the logic behind this decision to give them these cabinet posts is actually very clever and very smart. If they really want to win the next election, Reform, they need to steal as many votes as they can from the Tory Party. I've said for years the Tory Party needs to die. It's betrayed the nation, unforgivable, can never be entrusted with office again. Most Tory MPs are wet. They should call it the rename it the neoliberal party rather than the Tory party. But Tory party voters are far more to the right than the Tory party MPs, and Tory party voters share all the views of Reform and Nigel Farage, but they've always been a bit reluctant to lend their vote to Reform. Who's the most popular amongst Tory party voters? Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick. So by stealing these two and bringing them over, they have a means now for getting over that crucial Tory party member vote into the Reform's ranks. That's why I think this is an excellent move for them to do, and that eventually, you know, they can probably have a hostile takeover and just destroy the Tory party. So I think bringing characters like this over is sensible. Others you don't want to bring over because then you will be a Tory party 2.0, but not with Jenrick and Braverman. And I think obviously giving Suella Braverman tried and tested things to deal with like diversity and equality, absolutely excellent.
And Nigel deliberately used the term centre-right as a description for where reform is on the political spectrum. Is he right to do that?
I think so, absolutely, because,
haven't we had enough of centre-right? Haven't we had decades of centre-right?
There used to be centre-right and then there used to be far-right, right? So so centre-right in the old days did mean proper Conservative government. We haven't had that for a long time. You can call it centre-right, you can call it right-wing. I don't think there's a difference between either of those in my senses. I'm equally comfortable with the right-wing government calling itself that for reform, as long as they actually do put forward the policies which we have full confidence.
But if he's calling Reform UK centre-right, does that dilute its message of radical reform, radical change?
You can still be radical, but have you position yourself firmly on the right of politics. I don't think we should get sidetracked by semantics as to whether you're right-wing or centre-right. The policy should dictate to people exactly where this party stands and as a potential government. And if they want to be in power, they do need to have real policies about reversing mass immigration, stopping the boats. I've written many pieces and spoken a lot about how you do this. I don't think I'm necessarily far right. I would say that I'm centre-right and right-wing, and I'm perfectly happy.
You're right about everything.
Well, there we go.
Now, let's take a listen to Robert Jenrick, who's talked about what he'll do with the economy. Don't forget, he addresses the nation at 11 a.m. today, but he gave us a sneak preview yesterday.
It will be a plan that restores stability to our economy, a plan that cuts waste, that brings down the benefits bill, that ensures that we can lower taxes and cut bills, that brings back good jobs to this country once again.
Well, there you go. That's quite interesting. We've actually got a voice note in relation to this new lineup for Reform UK, and here's a voice note from Lee.
Morning, Mark. Lee from Manchester. Actually, your mission this morning, instead of talking about their front bench, how about you actually talk about what Reform's policies actually are? I've not heard a single thing about what they're gonna do to, quote, save this country. Not heard a single word. And I'm sick to death of having you and your other presenters having them on, letting them talk, and they've still not come up with any answers yet. So until they do, my vote will be going elsewhere. Bye.
Well, Lee, thank you for your voice note, and a very impassioned voice note. And you're absolutely right. It's very thin gruel at the moment in terms of what we're hearing from Reform UK. I would say that there are a few bold ideas out there, including scrapping net zero altogether. They clearly want to reduce taxes when that can be afforded. They want to tackle wokery in our public institutions. You're not going to have birthing humans and chest feeders in the NHS. But yeah, we do need answers, don't we, Rafe Hadelman-Ku, about what exactly this Reform government would do in power?
Yeah, but I contrast this with Trump 1 and Trump 2. When Trump 1 was in power, he didn't really know what they wanted to do because they didn't expect to be in power. And it was a good thing for Trump to be out of power for 4 years when you had Biden there, because over those 4 years, they got the right team together, they professionalized, and they got the right policies in place and hit the ground running. And it's the same thing with Reform. They have enough of a lead up to the next election to get themselves in order. They would be the first to admit they're not ready for government now. They've actually recently said that they're part professionalised now. They are professionalising rapidly. They've brought on people like Danny Kruger. They've got James Orr, the academic, heading up the policy unit. I fully expect that by the time we get to the next election, they will be pitch perfect for launching their manifestos, and we'll have all the policies there. We just need to give them time, because they're basically upscaling hugely to be seen as a potential government in waiting. Right now, we don't have a whole raft of policies, but I hope and expect, well, I would expect them to come out with some properly radical policies in the next 2 years. And just remember how much the Overton window has shifted in the last year. We are discussing things in February 2026 we wouldn't have imagined discussing a year ago. I believe in the next year to 2 years, we'll have even more radical policies coming out.
Most definitely. Can you understand Lee's frustration that Reform UK are getting a lot of airtime, they're ahead in the polls, based upon not much information about what they would do in power?
Yes. Look, there's a lot of hope about being put into Reform. That's why this is so important that this is a success. I say this is the most crucial election we're going to face at the next time round. because of demographics. You know, 60% of this nation votes for centre-left parties, 40% vote for centre-right parties. The great tragedy is 2% of right-wing voters die every year, and they're not being replaced by young voters. We have a huge issue here demographically. That's why this election is so crucial, and we need to unite the right. There is a lot of hope here, and if the British people get betrayed again, well, you just wonder what's going to happen, because they were betrayed by the Tories, betrayed by Brexit, by Boris over Brexit. They cannot be betrayed again. There's a lot of stuff riding on reform. That's why I think they're sensible to be cautious and make sure they really do have policies that can be tested before they're launched to the public.
Most definitely. And what about this from Sean, who said, "Good morning, Mark. Just imagine if a reform government did nothing else but stop the nonsense of Labour. How much better off would we be even before Nigel and his team implement any of their policies?" Well, looking a bit more detail for Lee and many who want to know what reform would do in power, here is Zia Youssef, effectively the Shadow Home Secretary, on illegal immigration.
If you are in this country illegally right now and you are watching this, I want to be crystal clear. As Reform's Home Secretary, I will ensure that you are deported from these lands. A Reform government will ensure that we right the wrongs of manifold governments in recent decades.
Now, here's another thing that I think is something that Lee and many others would like to know, which is even when there is a policy announcement like deporting anyone that's entered the country illegally, Rafe, sounds great on paper. Will it happen? Can it happen?
Well, we don't know. It's still too early. We need to see the detail on all of this. We have to be patient. We still do have a long time before the next election, but certainly the very reason that Reform has the potential to become the next government is because of their promises on immigration. Immigration is the great touch paper. It is the most, mass immigration was the greatest act of harm to happen to this country, far more consequential than the cost of fighting the Second World War. The British people expect delivery. They have been betrayed before. They cannot be disappointed, and Reform isn't stupid. They know that they need to deliver on this if they're to have any hope of ever being re-elected. So I would say that they know the challenge, and I just hope and I expect them to live up to it.
Next up, Nigel Farage attacks a journalist live at his press conference. It is explosive stuff. That's next, 6:32 Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:34, you are listening to Talk Breakfast, and let me tell you that we've got big problems in this country. Generation jobless, as Britain's youth unemployment now reaches the highest level in Europe. So have Labour reawakened the old enemy of unemployment? Do you know young people that are struggling to get work? Your kids, friends, family? This from Dave in Aberdeen. Good morning, Mark. My wife's youngest grandson is 16. He now has to apply for PIP in his own right. He will never have to work a day in his life, and it really annoys me. None of his family are on benefits. He doesn't care. 500,000 children out of poverty, says Martin. What about the 60 million plus they are putting into poverty? And James has sent me a very important note. He says, good morning, Mark. I work in a very wealthy area of North London. In the 20 years of running my business in this area, I've never known it so difficult for the children of my clients to get work. These are highly educated young adults who have access to every opportunity. So I can only think how difficult it is for those who don't come from wealth. It's quite simple. Make it easy for businesses to grow and make profit, and then they will hire and restore aspiration for young people, and they will commit to life. James, thank you for that very important message. And this is the issue with this government. They don't understand that if you make life easier for wealth creators and businesses, then there will be less unemployment, there'll be more tax revenue, there'll be more growth, which is national income, which pays for the doctors, the police officers, and to fix the potholes.
That's just it. It's not government's job to create jobs. It's government's job to create an environment where jobs will occur in the marketplace, to support businesses, and then take the tax from there at a reasonable level, which will fund your public services. We seem to be doing everything topsy-turvy.
Well, any government that sees it as its role to employ people, that's a Ponzi scheme, isn't it?
Yeah, and what have we seen? We've seen massive increases for the unions, massive increases for the public service, and massive increases for benefits, with all of that going on to the private sector. It's absolutely mad. It's absolutely mad.
It's a deep, deep concern, is it not? 1 in 9 new homes built in areas of flood risk. This is quite remarkable. This is 1 in 9 new homes in England built between 2022 and 2024, constructed in areas that could now be at risk of flooding, according to new data. The figures show the number of homes being built in risky areas is on the rise. A previous analysis showed that between 2013 and 2022, 1 in 13 new homes were in potential flooding zones. What do you make of that?
Well, I haven't read the story, but this also drives me mad, because I remember 10 years ago people discussing this very issue about new housing estates being literally built in floodplains. I mean, planes designed for flooding. Now, look, you can say what you want to about climate change or whatever, net zero, but there is more flooding than there used to be. We are having more extreme weather events than we've ever had before. Look how much rain we've just had in January and February alone.
Correct.
Rather than spending money on all of these subsidies for renewables and so forth, spend money on flood defences. Because the cost of a flooding is so huge and horrific. The insurance costs, the billions of pounds are spent. For a fraction of that price, you could put in proper flood defences.
Most definitely. Are Reform ready for power? Have they got the right team to save Britain? Here's a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mark. Sean from Grimsby here. Seen a lot of infighting about the new Reform people. So here's my take. Do I particularly like these old Tories? Not particularly. Do I trust any of these politicians? Not remotely. But if Reform get in and do nothing, then nothing changes. No, we still have massive bills, etc., etc. Yet if they get in and they're only 10% better, then that is a vast improvement. Anyway, Mark, great show. Got to go. Got to pay for someone's hotel, mate.
Sean, more power to you, and thank you for an excellent voice note. Sean has said what many of my viewers and listeners have said to me over recent months, Rafe, which is that if things even just get 10% better, we'll take that. Expectations are not sky high about a future Reform UK administration.
Yeah, but what a damning indictment, where anything is better, but we have to aim as high as possible. May not reach there, but at least let's try to aim slightly higher than just marginally better than Labour. I mean, that's the thing. We thought that things couldn't possibly get worse than the Tories, didn't we? Well, things can always get worse when Labour is in charge, as we've just seen here.
I mean, here's a crazy question for you, just for now. Would you take Liz Truss back?
No, I wouldn't. And
Really?
I'll tell you
I'd
why.
have her back in a flash.
I wouldn't, because there's one thing I don't...
Bring back the lettuce.
There's one thing I detest more than an incompetent lefty. It's somebody who's disingenuous. And I always... Remember, never forget, Liz Truss wanted to increase immigration as Prime Minister. People forget that.
Well, that's quite interesting. And, of course, she's an ex-Lib Dem, is she
And
not?
she just recently followed me on Twitter, so she's probably going to unfollow me.
You burned your
having
bridges.
said that.
Well, I'd have her back in a flash because overall she's certainly got better policies than this government. Even with that botched budget, she was trying to do the right thing, which is to grow.
Yes, no, well, look, look, that aside, she is far better than Starmer, obviously. But then again, I don't know who I'd have. I'm trying to think of somebody even more silly to become Prime Minister than Starmer.
Mr. Blobby, it's a very low bar in terms of anything that could be better than this current government. What I will say, though, is that, you know, Sean raises that point that even a 10% improvement, he'll take that. Do Reform UK need to manage expectations?
Yes, well, that's the other thing. It's one thing to make great promises. One of the great failings of Boris Johnson was the fact that he promised so much and he under-delivered. I always remember Jean Chrétien, the Prime Minister of Canada, one of the most popular Prime Ministers ever there, because he said, my secret was quite simple. I under-promised and I met my expectations, and I actually over-delivered on those promises.
Yeah.
Keep expectations low. People will always be happy when you get more than they were expecting. Give them the world and deliver less, they won't be happy.
Well, of course, that's a very fair point. Well, let's take a listen now to Nigel Farage receiving a question from a journalist at the Financial Times, which he was none too happy about. And I think this will give you a flavour of the kind of relationship that Farage will have with the media if he becomes Prime Minister. And it's very different to what we got now. Take a listen.
What do you say to members of the public who might query your party's commitment and belief in state education? And are you able to confirm whether your children go to state schools?
By the way, I love the FT. It's fantastic. The day after the big Mandelson story broke, your front page politics story was about a Reform councillor in Kent. So we'll leave it there and we'll move on. We'll leave it there. There's no point. There's no point. Just write some silly story tomorrow and have fun with it.
There you go. And the lead up to that question involved the journalist saying, you went to private school, Suella Braverman went to private school, Robert Jenrick went to private school. Farage rolled his eyes. He said, this is fun, isn't it? What do you make of Farage's handling of that question?
Beautiful. I mean, obviously taking a page slightly from Donald Trump on all of this, people are tired of these sorts of questions, these sorts of gotcha moments. They want real topics, real discussions about the issues that face the public. They don't want to be sidetracked down these little personal interest issues of people on the left, like the Financial Times, once a grand paper, and has basically gone down such a strange path recently, trying to knock down anyone on the right. And people aren't buying it any longer. Everyone, I think, even people who don't like Farage, can see the futility of those sorts of questions, and they're behind him on this, I would think.
Most definitely. However, is Nigel Farage a little thin-skinned when probed? I will agree with him that that question from the FT was trivial and ridiculous. But Christopher Hope from a rival network is not exactly an ideological enemy of Nigel Farage. And he simply said, look, these are just a handful of shadow cabinet appointments. Where are the others? And Farage throws his hands in the air and goes, I can't win, can I? Do you not think that was a rather intemperate response to a perfectly reasonable question?
Yes, I didn't see it, so I can't comment on it. But
okay,
yes,
I'll do the impersonation. I can't win, can I? I'm Nigel Farage. I can't win, can I? I've announced 5 people. What do you want? What do you... You know, that's kind of... He can be...
I didn't know he was from Sunderland. I wasn't aware of that.
Yikes. Jamaica, via Cardiff in North Wales. Do you not think that Nigel's got a slight issue there with when he's probed, that he comes across as a bit thin-skinned?
Yeah, well, look, Nigel is Nigel, you know. Marmite, love him or hate him, he reacts the way that he does. He's usually very chipper. I mean, the good thing about Nigel is I've never seen him really angry. He always turns most things into a joke and a laugh.
It was a very Trump-like response, wasn't it? And is that a good or a bad thing for our politics?
Look, it's undeniable that a lot of attention has been paid to how Trump got into power. Trump is not the appropriate model for the UK. We're a very different country. Our voter base is very different. We don't have a MAGA-type base here. But certainly there are lessons you can learn and there are modifications you can do to Trump. And I think certainly there are elements of that, not just with reform, but you'll see that across Europe.
But not to labour the point, though, but do you not think that... Because I think Nigel is a very charismatic man. I know him personally. He's a gentleman. And if he can rescue the fortunes of this country, then he'll be a hero. No problem with that. And we're all crying out for change. But are you concerned by his temperament to any degree at all? The idea that yesterday still came across as the Nigel show, that it's not a democracy, that party, it is an autocracy. And just the rather testy way that Nigel gets when he is probed by journalists, even from those on his own side, the likes of Camilla Tominey at The Telegraph and the aforementioned Christopher Hope.
Look, there is no denying the fact that one of the biggest issues for reform, and indeed for the Brexit Party in UKIP, was that it was seen as a one-man band. We're told now the whole purpose of yesterday was to demonstrate actually that it wasn't a one-man band any longer, that there were going to be other people speaking up just as much. He said perhaps even more. He even said, I may take more of a back seat now that I have this talent available. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Most definitely. What about this story in The Telegraph? Advert banned for stereotyping black men after just one complaint. We've got a little clip. Take a listen.
I said you look cute, I'm trying to take you on a date, you're not listening. Well, that is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Crack a smile, I'm only joking with you, mate. Why did you not want to talk to me, man? See enough or something?
Can't you see me? Can you not see me sitting here? What, you can't see me? I'm sat here.
I said you look good and you don't want to go out with me. Hello? Can you hear me?
Seeing someone else uncomfortable makes you uncomfortable.
Oh, I'm just sick of this propaganda. I just find it all very exhausting. Anyway, Rafe, you've got, if those listening on the radio, you've got a white guy that's harassing a woman on public transport, and then a black guy that is as well. A single complaint has seen the advert pulled. Your reaction?
Well, the advert was pulled because it was seen to be perpetuating negative stereotypes around black people. I mean, this boils my blood. If you want evidence of our two-tier society, we've had so many ridiculous public information videos showing white men as the victim, as the perpetrators of crime. You have a white guy being misogynistic with a group of ethnic minority friends of his saying, "Calm down, mate." We've had there was a video produced by the police with a Pakistani young man, and it was all about grooming gangs, and they had to refilm that and put a white person in place of the Pakistani guy for fear of inflaming tensions. My God, we are being gaslit on all of this. We have the evidence. In London, white British are only 37% white in this country. We know we know Afghanis and Syrians, Sudanese commit the most sexual assault and rapes in this country by percentage of the population. The purpose of these videos is for people to see themselves in the videos. There's no point making videos if people can't relate to the characters there. And I would say you need to actually call out the groups who are most at risk of these sorts of things.
Most definitely. 6:47, you're listening to Talk Breakfast. And next up, were Buckingham Palace responsible for the Andrew cover-up? And if so, should the King abdicate? 6:47, that's next.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday from 1.
My 12-year-old. Obviously, he won't be 12 then, he'll be 16, but if he's anything like he is now, he shouldn't be anywhere near an election booth. Do you sympathise with him? Is he the victim of the 24-hour news cycle we just spoke of?
I think his failings are internal. He's useless, incompetent, has no political judgment.
Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk.
Weekday afternoons from 1 o'clock. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
.49, top of the morning. This is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you all week, in for Jeremy Kyle, and a shocking headline this morning. Youth unemployment, the highest now in Europe, from the party of working people who are out of work. You couldn't make it up. Here's a voice note from Matt. Take it away.
Morning, Matt. Matt in Warrington. Still loading the van. A bit cold today. Got the gloves on. Yeah, well, young people getting jobs. My 16-year-old, she's at college. She wants to be a midwife. And she's got herself a nice little Saturday job at a well-known coffee shop. And they're brilliant with her. They pay her decent money. There's jobs out there, but you've got to go out and work hard. You've got to be out there and confident, and it will come. So there is hope. And keep up the great show. Loved it this week. Thanks, mate. Speak to you soon.
Well, thank you, Matt. Really, really wonderful to have you with me as you are loading the van, doing your day's graft whilst listening to Talk Breakfast. It's great to have your company. And listen, you know, Matt, you speak for many millions of people, as does Ange in Gloucestershire, who says, good morning, Mark and Rafe. Great show. I'm nearly 70 and have lived through Labour government disasters before, but this one has been staggering in its speed. You've hit it on the head, Mark. A government with no vision. They're not even fighting fires successfully. They are creating them. Do you think that it's possible that this egregious government could see us witnessing the last ever Labour government?
It's very real now. I mean, the other story we're not talking about, well, we are talking about sometimes, is the rise of the Green Party, of course, as a viable force. And given how truly insane their policies are, that's remarkable. But as I said before, you know, we do have the most radically left-wing youth in history, and quite simply, they're becoming disillusioned by the Labour Party. And so I see an increasing polarisation where the traditional centre ground collapses and you get more of this.
Now, were Buckingham Palace responsible for an Andrew cover-up? And if so, should the King abdicate? Kinsey Schofield is the host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. Good morning, Kinsey.
Well, I feel like we should be asking Rafe this question, not me. Rafe is so knowledgeable.
Well, Rafe is very knowledgeable indeed, and I can hear that you're in the throes of a heavy cold there, Kinsey, but it's great to have you with us on the show. But let me ask you, first of all, Kinsey, do you think that there is a case to answer on the part of King Charles and the late Queen Elizabeth, given the activities of Andrew?
Well, since the King's team came out against the headline that he financially contributed to the settlement that was given to Virginia Giuffre, I have felt the need to defend him. I feel like this is an inherited problem from the King's Palace's perspective. This is a nightmare scenario. The King has worked methodically to get rid of the bad apples and keep the peace, removing Andrew from public life. They tried convincing the public the scandal was contained, but you know, when multiple police forces start reviewing evidence, the story stops being a past embarrassment and becomes a present constitutional threat. It keeps the monarchy tied to Jeffrey Epstein in the public mind. And that is a profound humiliation for the King personally and a serious credibility crisis for the institution itself.
Indeed, Rafe Hadel-Mancu, many people just think that the butlers, the courtiers, the management of the firm, that the King, the late Queen Elizabeth II, they must have known about Andrew to some degree.
No, I think what happened was the king quite clearly. I mean, you can't blame Her late Majesty for this. This is a woman who was well into her 90s when all of this arose, and the idea that she was on the detail of all of this, I think, is clearly.
Well, she wrote a cheque for £12 million to clear Andrew's name.
This is a woman who was basically not in control of the details on all of this. So it was her advisors, and the king. I fully appreciate did not appreciate the full scale of any of this. We were told this was a one-off with Virginia Giuffre. This was a woman who had huge questions surrounding her. This was just at the time that the Platinum Jubilee was happening, and they didn't want this to overshadow the Jubilee. They thought, look, without any admission of guilt, we can make a settlement payment here, let this go away. Obviously, this will be the end of the story. Nobody imagined in the royal household, I think, of what was yet to come, or how they had been betrayed and lied to by Andrew.
Now, Hillary Clinton, Kinsey, has told the BBC that there's a case to answer here. Take a listen.
Do you regret the links that there have been? You know, we have no links. We have a very clear record that we've been willing to talk about, which my husband has said. He took some rides on the airplane for his charitable work. I don't recall ever meeting him.
Did you ever meet Ghislaine Maxwell?
I did on a few occasions, and thousands of people go to the Clinton Global Initiative. So it to me is not something that is really at the heart of what this matter is about.
Does that look to be the case then, Kinsey, that Bill Clinton is home and hosed in terms of any serious links to Epstein?
Ghislaine was at your daughter's wedding. I don't do enough charity work, I'll admit that right here, but my charity work usually does not involve a hot tub, Bill Clinton. I mean, like, that's ridiculous. Based on, if you search Bill Clinton's name and just search the millions of documents that were recently dumped, the Clintons are mentioned 1,193 times, Mark Dolan. I have a very hard time believing that there wasn't a deeper relationship there.
Wow, damning words from Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, how do you see this playing out for King Charles? Will there come a point where he can stop the bleeding?
Oh, Mark, there's a great Time magazine cover the year that Charles and Diana divorced, and it says, "Will this boy save the monarchy?" And it's a picture of teenage Prince William. And that, to me, is the future. All we can do is look forward to the future, a clean slate, free of scandal, full of hope. This is a stain on the institution, unfortunately, and it's not the way the king wanted his reign to be remembered. This is not the legacy he wants.
Is it conceivable, Kinsey, that the king would take one for the team and stand down in order to preserve the institution and let William take over, given the fact that William has no links to this story whatsoever?
I think Rafe's going to be mad at me, but I'm going to say, hypothetically, if the king were to do that, sacrifice himself for the future of the monarchy, he would not admit defeat in the Epstein scenario. And he would say, I'm doing it for my own personal health. I'm sick. I'd like to rest.
Yeah, so that would be the sort of the fig leaf that would allow him to step down. Is it something that it would be in his nature to do you think, Kinsey?
I think that he wants this job. I think he loves this job. He was born for this job. I think that it would be very hard for him to do that.
What do you think about that, Rafe? Is abdication even 1% possible?
Not at all. The king has no need to abdicate. The king won't abdicate. There's no constitutional facility for it.
What if it involves saving the monarchy?
We had an aberration. We're not anywhere near that point. There's no evidence that the effects of the Epstein case are putting the monarchy into such an existential crisis.
How can the firm not have known that Andrew was a wrong?
The point is, for the king, very much like
and he's the head of the firm.
For the king, very much like his mother, becoming king was a sacrament. This was we're the only country to still have a coronation where you physically crown the sovereign. This is a job you take for life. There's a solemn vow, a covenant with the British people, and he's
not if you're presiding over a knocking shop.
Look, let's treat this with due respect, I would say, because the king
I've
was
got
not,
no respect
the
for
king
Andrew
was not
and his alleged crimes.
Nobody does.
On palace, on royal turf.
Nobody has been a harsher critic of Andrew than I have. The point is, the king acted in good faith, having understood that Andrew was speaking to him as an honourable gentleman, which clearly now we know was not the case. He was lied and betrayed to. The monarchy shouldn't be the casualty of all of this. This falls squarely on Andrew, who should be called to testify. If anything, I think the king should compel his brother to actually comply with police requests for an interview. That might be another step for him to take. Abdication is for the birds.
Kinsey, last word on this.
Agree with Rafe.
Well, I've got to say, I'm concerned about this. Andrew's nickname in the 80s was Randy Andy. Are you telling me that King Charles didn't know that his brother was a wrong'un? And you can't just bring a load of women into the palace for that not to be on official records. He is the boss. The buck stops with him. He's the CEO of the firm and of the royal family and of the monarchy. And I think there's a case to answer. I don't want him to abdicate. I don't want him to fall, but I do want the monarchy to survive. And if he's been asleep at the wheel whilst his brother got up to no good, then something has to happen. Rafe, what a thrill to have you in the studio. Please come back and see us soon. What a towering intellect and a gentleman he is, Rafe Hadelman-Koo, broadcaster, historian and fellow at the New Culture Forum. What about this, folks? Will Farage's new team save Britain? This is Talk Breakfast.
Hello from Crowborough, where the local residents are enraged with what has happened to their community merely overnight, when just 27 single male asylum seeker illegal migrants were bussed into their military training camp. Behind me are local residents, people from all over the country. Shabana Mahmood has said that this is an effective way of getting rid of those expensive, flashy asylum hotels. But unfortunately, these people are still placed within the community.
Whole town is very afraid because these are unvetted men from countries that are, the government warn us not to go to. I've got an 18-year-old daughter and she gets the bus opposite the camp. Do you feel safe for her? No, so that will have to stop. Right. We'll either have to wait with her or take her to wherever she needs to go.
The reason I'm here today is because I live in Crowborough and my family, I've got a wife and children, and just worried about, my wife walking to work and my sons, walking about. Anything can happen, can't it, that nowadays and age, what's going on, what's happening in this country. So I'm just concerned and frightened,
There was support from other towns, other communities, because of course Shabana Mahmood has threatened other communities, and she said they're going to open site after site after site. Well, I would hope that if she's going to try and do that, she learns some lessons about the way she's done it in Crowborough, because this is not finished. We are not finished objecting to this plan.
Grover says no! Grover says no! Grover says no!
We would urge her to reconsider. And whatever she does, she needs to talk to the people that she's imposing these things on.
If you had a direct line to Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood, what would you say to them?
Look after your most vulnerable first. It's your priority to look after your vulnerable.
If they're bringing illegal immigrants into a camp in the dead of night, why are they doing that? They're doing that because it's disingenuous, it's dishonest, it's covert, and they're trying to keep the reality away from the local community of what they're actually doing to us. We've now got to the end of the entrance to the camp. We've got cameras, we've got police drones. It's like a cloud that's come over this community.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning, coming up to 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. In for Jeremy Kyle all of this week. And we start with some breaking news at the top of the 7 hour. Inflation has fallen to 3% in the year to January. That's good news. It has come down, which raises the prospect that interest rates could come down too. So some rare good news for Rachel from accounts. But this is overshadowed by the shocking news that Britain's youth unemployment is now the highest in Europe. So have Labour reawoken the old enemy of unemployment? And could it be U-turn number 17? You heard me right. As the government rethink plans to increase the minimum wage for young workers. Speaking of Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor is resisting extra spending on defence. So is Britain now less safe under this Labour government? And as a group of British Chagossians return to their home islands, is the Chagos giveaway now dead in the water? And of course, a very glossy press conference fronted by Nigel Farage yesterday. Simple question for you at 7:04 on a Wednesday morning. Can Reform UK's new team save Britain? Let me know your thoughts. My number is 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. Now, one of the trumpeted claims of this Labour government is that they're tackling child poverty with the lifting of the two-child benefit cap and, of course, free school meals. Well, here's a voice note from Kitty on that very subject.
Morning, Mark. Kitty from Kent here. Just want to counter one of the people who wrote in to say Labour have achieved free school meals. They're not free. I got up at 5:15 this morning to travel 2 hours into London to work 9 hours today to pay for those free school meals, those free breakfasts. They're not free. That viewer needs to give his head a wobble.
Kitty, you're absolutely right. We also have a benefits system in this country, which means that families are already well equipped to feed their children. And for decades, it was never an issue for families to put food in their children's stomachs. And for some reason, in 2026, they're not capable of it. And that in the context of the highest welfare bill we've ever had. Make it make sense. Daily Telegraph front page. Reeves blocking defence cash boost. Military chiefs sound alarm over £28 billion shortfall as funding requests are rejected. Well, this is a big problem, because I think that the country is less safe under this Labour government if they will not spend on defence in an ever-changing and increasingly more dangerous world. Romeo repaid travel expenses after billing the taxpayer. This is Keir Starmer's great hope, right? This woman is going to save the civil service. She would become Britain's most senior civil servant, the cabinet secretary. And her name is Dame Antonia Romeo, accused of bullying in the workplace and also of fiddling her expenses, denies those allegations, cleared via an investigation, but still bad headlines for somebody that seeks the most senior role within our bureaucracy. And Chagos Islanders back after 50 years of exile. Daily Mirror, reform jokers are dangerous. No laughing matter is the headline. Farage cabinet full of Tories who would hammer ordinary Brits again. And they back tax cuts for the rich, axing workers' rights, and will target the NHS again. Well, it's funny that the Mirror didn't get the memo because they're so worried that reform will destroy the economy. Don't worry about that, Daily Mirror, because your lovely Labour Party have just done that in 18 months in office. The Guardian, we stood on his shoulders. Jesse Jackson dies at 84. And 1 in 9 new homes built in areas of flood risk. And last but not least for now, the Sun newspaper. Pressure ramps up. Cops in Andy sex probe. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was last night facing a criminal probe into sex trafficking claims. At least 7 police forces are examining new evidence from the Jeffrey Epstein files. Essex police are assessing claims that women were flown to Stansted on his Lolita Express private jet. Now, what I want to ask you at 7:07 in the morning is how much did King Charles know? Are you telling me that Charles didn't know that his brother was a wrong-un? Are you telling me that the palace authorities were not surprised and didn't raise an eyebrow that young women from Russia and Romania were being flown into the UK and having dinner with the ex-Prince Andrew at Buckingham Palace and on the Windsor estate? You can't just wander into Buckingham Palace. You got passes and you got security, and there's a log of everyone that comes in and everyone that comes out. So I think this goes all the way to the top. If Charles knew what was going on, must he step down? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. The excellent Damien is taking your calls today. Nehar is directing our TV output. So if you want to watch the show, head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. Hit the live button. This is a radio show and it's a TV network. And Christian is the boss today, and I'm delighted to say our lead engineer, the one and only Mark. Let's get reaction to the big stories of the day, including the breaking news that inflation has fallen to 3% from 3.4 in December. Nigel Evans is the former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. Good morning, Nigel.
Mark, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well. It's great to see you. Let's give credit where it's due. Some rare good news for the Chancellor. Inflation falls.
Yeah, it's got to be welcomed, hasn't it? But it's not just in the United Kingdom. This is happening throughout the whole of Europe as well. I suspect a lot of it, Mark, may be due to the fact that there's more people out there who simply have not got the money. As you know, unemployment went up earlier this week to 5.2%. There's a lot of youth unemployment out there. And if you haven't got the money, you can't spend it. And so it may well be, as a result, that people have got less money in their pockets, and therefore prices are coming down. But nonetheless, for whatever the reason, it's got to be welcomed that inflation is now on the dip.
Well, you're so right about that, Nigel, because low inflation is only good if it tracks with high growth. And it could be that prices are dropping because there is so little economic activity. I mean, we hear this figure, don't we, about 0.8% of economic growth, which is already pathetic. But actually, that's the overall GDP figure per head, per viewer and listener to this show. We're in recession.
Yeah, growth is going down in real terms. That's absolutely right, because, of course, the number of people in the United Kingdom has grown, and we all know why.
Yeah.
And so in the real, there is no real growth figure whatsoever. And don't forget, this government was elected on a manifesto, a prospectus of saying that they wanted to have growth. And what did they do? They piled on costs to industry. And that has had a consequence. And therefore, as I say, unemployment is now gone up. And that's going to be incredibly worrying. At the same time, Mark, you've got some of the big earners, the wealthy, who are now fleeing our shores. Over 16,000 have left the United Kingdom this year. And the economically active, those aged between 18 and 34, 180,000 of them have left the United Kingdom to go and work somewhere else abroad. And so this is money that's not coming into the United Kingdom. And at the same time, of course, we've got thousands who are illegally entering the United Kingdom who are not economically active at all and are costing UK taxpayers money. People like that lady you mentioned earlier on, who goes out to work very early in the morning, works 9 hours a day, paying her taxes. For what, Mark? For what?
Most definitely. Now, a recent economic miracle of the last 2 to 3 decades, Nigel, has been the effective eradication of unemployment. Certainly since 2010 and that coalition government, Britain hasn't really had unemployment to speak of. And yet, under this new administration, ironically, the party of working people, more of us are out of work than ever.
Yeah, that's right. It was a case that firms were chasing people because they were finding it difficult to attract people to come into work there. And now, of course, you've got hundreds who are applying for every vacancy that's there. And one of the worrying statistics that came out earlier this month was how many graduates are unemployed who are actually on benefits. And that's got to be incredibly worrying. You know, when you spend 3 years going to university, you get your qualifications, and you can't get a job and you're on benefits. I mean, there's got to be something incredibly worrying about that. And as you know, how many flip-flops that the government have been involved in recently, well, it looks to me as if the latest one may well be that the government are going to ditch this the rights of everybody to earn exactly the same minimum wage or universal wage that is available, and that they're now likely to look particularly at younger people and ditch their guarantee that everybody's going to be paid the same. So we're in an incredible economic downturn. You say, are we in recession? Well, I think for the vast majority of people out there who are finding it incredibly tough, Mark, to meet their household bills as they see energy costs going up, council tax increasing, then for a ton of people out there, they are personally in their own financial recessions.
If you're just joining us at 7:13 on Talk Breakfast, inflation has fallen to 3% from 3.4% in December, which is great news. However, growth is non-existent. Youth unemployment, the highest in Europe. Quite provably, the economy has worsened significantly since Labour came to power. I'm afraid the facts don't lie, the facts don't care about your feelings. But here's Rachel Reeves from last week saying that, oh, you know, it's going to be fine eventually. Take a listen.
We can't turn things around overnight, but we have created the conditions now for the economy to grow, and it is doing just that.
Has Rachel Reeves created the conditions for the economy to grow, Nigel?
Hardly. And you see that in the hospitality industry more than you see it anywhere else. Yeah, the minimum wage has gone up, but also they said they wouldn't put up national insurance. And what did they do? They put up national insurance for employers. And so you've got a ton of employers out there now who are thinking twice, particularly with the Employment Rights Bill marching down its way. And it'd be more difficult if you do employ somebody to get rid of them. So a lot of employers are now actually putting off employing anybody. That means that all these people are being economically inactive. So they're not earning money themselves. Therefore, they're not spending it, and they're not paying tax either, Mark. So this is a really incredibly worrying time, but it does seem as if alarm bells are finally being heard in Downing Street. But it may all be too late, and I suspect it is all too late for Keir Starmer in any event. It doesn't matter how many flip-flops he's doing. I liken him to a piece of toast, because we all think he's toast, but he's still in the toaster. And it depends how brown or black you want the toast, but eventually he's going to pop out.
Most definitely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. Yesterday, Nigel Farage fronted a rather glossy press conference. It actually looked like a TV game show, like 15-1, or maybe The Weakest Link. What did you make of the event?
Well, a little unimpressed, to be honest, because, of course, you've got the Conservative retreads are the main show as far as the jobs that he's doling out are concerned. But he only mentioned, I think, 4 positions. And one of the biggest criticisms of reform is that they haven't got the experience. They haven't got enough people, clearly, to front an entire shadow cabinet. So when we were told that the shadow cabinet were going to be announced, I thought, actually, that we were going to find all sorts of people, maybe people from industry, people with experience, were going to be given positions. But no, we've only been given 4. And I suspect it's a great strategy by Farage. I mean, I've got to say he is a master showman, and what they're doing is they're trickling out the news in order to seem relevant on a daily basis. So there's always something there. But I will take my hat off to him on one other news story, Mark, which is the Chagos Islands. Now, I know Rachel from Accounts hasn't got the money for anything, but it does seem as if she can find £35 billion to give to Mauritius to take off an island that Mauritius has never owned. But 4 Chagosians have now reinvaded Chagos. And I tweeted yesterday that there's a huge dilemma for Keir Starmer. He's singly unable to remove illegal immigrants from the United Kingdom who come here in their thousands. And yet now his intention will be trying to remove Chagosians from the Chagos Islands. And I should imagine, I mean, the prospect of Chagos Islanders entering the Chagos Islands in small boats, I wonder where they got that idea from, Mark.
You couldn't make it up, could you? Is there nothing about Nigel Farage's insurgent political project that catches your eye, Nigel? I mean, this is a party that was ahead of the curve on scrapping net zero, which the Tories have finally caught up with. Nigel Farage was the brave man that was standing at Dover 10 years ago talking about the boats. It was only at the tail end of Rishi Sunak's administration that he suggested we should stop them. This guy's a leader, isn't he? And he's always right.
He is absolutely. He's the leader of a centre-right party. But my biggest fear, Mark, is we are dividing the right. If you look at opinion polls, if you add the Conservatives and Reform together, it's roughly 50% plus of the population are voting for centre-right parties. But my biggest fear is that he's going to split the right vote, and that's going to allow Keir Starmer, or whoever's going to be leading the Labour Party very shortly, to be able to take power, and that is incredibly worrying.
Isn't it the other way around, Nigel? Isn't it the Tories that are now splitting the right vote? It is Reform UK that are the dominant party of the right, and what the Tories need to do is just back off.
Well, Mark, I fully understand why many people decided that they weren't going to vote Conservative in the 2024 general election. And we've gone through a period, absolutely right, where people haven't been listening to us. But all of a sudden, that has changed. And why? It's because policies were announced at the last Conservative Party conference that resonate with the public. And the Conservative Party have finally got a leader who is actually leading. I mean, she is absolutely, Kemi Badenoch, trouncing Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's questions every Wednesday. She's confronting him where it really matters. I think she's having her impact. Absolutely, she's turned things around. I was worried, Mark. I was worried that we went through this period where we were in reflection and we weren't saying anything. And of course, the vacuum had been picked up by Reform. But now the attention has turned to Kemi Badenoch. As I say, she's actually performing miracles. But I'll go back to what I said earlier on. There's got to be a big fear. And it must be the thing that the Labour Party are really relying on, is that there's going to be a split to the right and that they're going to come through the middle. And I just simply hope and pray that the Conservatives can actually get their act together and are able to present a credible alternative. And they've got the experience as well, Mark, which quite clearly Reform have not got. You can't have an announcement saying this is going to be our shadow cabinet and then only announce 4 names, 2 of which were former Tories, who are part of the problem as to why we lost the last general election.
The difference, though, between Reform and the Tories is that you would have political will within the Reform movement to actually change the country, stop the boats, scrap net zero. Half of those Tory backbenchers are not true Conservatives like you, Nigel. They're closet Lib Dems who don't even want to exit the ECHR.
Yeah, well, they can get lost, Mark. Absolutely. We're going to leave.
That's the problem. Kemi's not the problem. The party's the problem.
No, there are some elements there are. But having said that, you know, they've got... if you look at since Kemi made the announcement, she had her own review on what needs to be done to ensure that we can stop illegal immigration into the United Kingdom. She's come forward with the policy of leaving the ECHR, and I can't name a single Conservative member of Parliament who's actually spoken out against that policy. So it is going to happen, and it needs to happen.
Their heart's not in it, though, is it? Those Tory backbenchers, their heart's not in it. They're falling into line now because Kemi's the boss. But ultimately, those were the same politicians arguing against leaving the ECHR before the last election.
Well, no, a ton of them have lost their seats. You know, 251 lost their seats in 2024. And if they want to come back into Parliament, they're going to have to go through a rigorous reselection. So there's no going to be...
Nigel, I mean, I am your #1 fan. You're articulate. You're a true Conservative to your core. If I cut you open, only blue would pour out of you. You're ideologically consistent, and you've done great things in the country as part of the Conservative movement. But it's over now, isn't it? You're in denial. The Tories are the junior partner, and it's all about Reform. They are the dominant party of the right, and there's no way the Tories will catch up, Nigel. You know that. I know that. It's time to stop pretending.
We got absolutely whacked in 2024. I thought it was a brain-dead decision.
There's no whacked. It's over, Big Nige.
Well, no.
Adios.
I thought there was an existential threat to the Conservative Party. And I also believe that if we carried on down the route that you were talking about, the route that actually got us hammered in 2024, then people who thought that we had hit the ground at 20%, should think again, and some of the polls were actually putting us way below that, and that we were going to end up with 20-odd seats in Parliament at the next general election. Well, that has been turned around, Mark. That has been turned around, and the Conservatives have started now to creep back in the opinion polls. And, you know, thank God. And the reason why is because they've got a proper, true Tory leader, I worked with Kemi Badenoch. You know, people ask me what she's like, and she, like me, you cut her, blue blood pours out. She is absolutely the leadership that the Tory party have been looking for. I voted for her. I was a bit worried, I've got to say. But I will also tell you one other thing as well, that, you know, like anybody who's a true Tory, you would look at reform and think, maybe they are the answer. And I thought that if Kemi was absolutely chucked out of Parliament after maybe the May local elections and Robert Jenrick had come in, I was going to quit the Tories. Now, I don't believe that's going to happen. And of course, Jenrick could see that it wasn't going to happen, and that's one of the reasons why he jumped. So say, part of the problem with reform is now that they've got too many ex-Tories who were part of the problem in the past, and now that they've joined reform.
Nigel, a colossal treat to have you on the show. Have an excellent Wednesday, and we'll see you very soon. Nigel Evans, former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. Is he right? Can the Tories roar back? Or is it game over? Let me know your thoughts on that. Sean in Bridlington, good morning, Mark. Kemi Badenoch can espouse any right-wing policy she likes. In power, the Lib Dem rump of the Tory party establishment will never allow things like leaving the ECHR. What about King Charles? How much did he know about Andrew? Are you telling me he didn't know that old Randy Andy was a wrong-un? Should he consider his position? Here's a voice note from Steve.
Good morning, Mark. This is Stephen Harts. As an ex-member of the Grenadier Guards, it's with a heavy heart I say that I think the monarchy should just be wound up now. Enough's enough. Charles's behaviour in his marriage was a disgrace. This lot really take the biscuit, not to mention the money. Enough's enough. Return the land to the people that was taken from us and just disappear. Hope you have a good day, mate. Cheers, bye.
Steve, thank you for that. Thank you for your service to this country, and a devastating view from Steve, who identifies as someone that's pro-monarchy, who says, actually, shut it all down, given the behaviour of leading members of the royal family. What do you think? Should the king consider abdication if it's been found that he knew more about Andrew than he is admitting? Next up, Suella Braverman, as a part of...
This is the Political Asylum, current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
We're with you every weekday night, Monday to Friday, 7 until 10 p.m, right here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:28, breaking news this morning on Talk Breakfast. Inflation has fallen to 3% from 3.4% in December, which is very good news. We'll give it credit where it's due. If inflation comes down, that is welcome. It is rare good news for the Chancellor, but it is welcome. The only slight concern is it could be because the economy is so depressed, there is so little economic activity that it's falling. We still welcome it. What we don't welcome is the highest youth unemployment in the whole of Europe. However, we need to talk about education now. Suella Braverman, if she becomes Education Secretary in a Reform UK government, wants the curriculum to be patriotic. Take a listen.
Contested ideas, political campaigns, controversial ideas will have no place in a reform curriculum. We will roll out a balanced and patriotic and fact-based curriculum. And, we will do away with all of this rewriting or decolonising of the curriculum, teaching our children how to be ashamed of Britain's history rather than proud of it, and pumping out a politicised agenda on extreme climate ideology. Of course, we want children to learn about the environment and geography and science, but not for schools to produce the next generation of eco-militant zealots.
Does Britain need a patriotic school curriculum? I'm delighted to welcome Serge Kafai, who is the executive head teacher of St Thomas the Apostle School. Good morning, Serge.
Good morning, Mark.
Thanks for joining us at the start of a very busy day for you. Your reaction to the remarks of Suella Braverman?
Well, in general, we've heard quite a lot from all the politicians that we don't trust anymore. In teaching 47 years now, that's where it's got to happen. We've let down our children time and time again, especially in the last 10 years. She seems to talk a lot of sense. I like the term balance. I like the word fact. Let's deal with facts when we're dealing with children. What she doesn't talk about perhaps is how she's going to do it. I wish she talked about maybe revisiting teacher standards so that anybody coming into teaching is reminded what we come into teaching for. We're not there to come in and press our own ideologies, etc.
Yeah.
We're there to make sure our children are prepared to contribute positively to the society they're going to live in, first and foremost. And then you've got a whole list of things that teachers should do. But she sounds good, but, we've seen her before. She's been in government, didn't seem to be doing much then. And that's, of course, the problem we've got with reform. They're new. The other lot, I'm sorry, I don't care about politics very much because I don't trust any of them anymore. I think the final blow for me was during COVID, where we completely abdicated our responsibility as adults to children.
Yeah.
Should never have happened. And all it needs is a little bit of common sense. But is it ignorance? Is it incompetence? I just think it's indifference. I'm not sure any of these politicians, and the other downside, of course, with the latest reform cabinet, is they are quite privileged. Their parents worked hard to make sure they had a private education. That's to their credit. I've got no problems with private education. In fact, that's where we should be looking to see why are people prepared to pay twice? Because they want lower pupil-teacher ratios, they want good teaching, and they want accountability. But trying to get back to the point, balance is key. If I take slavery as an example, while everyone's beating their breasts about repercussions or
reparations, yeah.
Reparations, why aren't we talking about a balance? Who the hell stopped slavery? And were the British the only people involved in slavery? In fact, there's plenty of places in the world where slavery still continues. So you want good teaching facts as best you can find it. Obviously, with social media and AI, even finding facts is a problem. Global warming is another one. I remember teaching 15 years ago when I dabbled in geography and stuff like that. And I remember telling the children when everyone was up in arms about the ozone layer. By the way, what's happened to that?
Yeah.
Remember, the ozone layer was disintegration and we were going to all blow up. Now, there's no question. Clean energy is for the future. It's great, etc., if we can manage it. But I always used to tell them, have you ever watched the film Ice Age? You know, that cartoon that was out around then.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, well, we're not in an ice age anymore because you know your woolly mammoths and your woolly rhinoceroses. The world heated up. It must have been all those cavemen driving around in their big cars.
That's exactly right. It's true.
You know? And that's where you should stop as a teacher and let them have a think. And at some point, one of them's going to put up their hands and say, hold on, sir, they didn't have big cars. They didn't have aeroplanes. So there you'll just be planting an idea. Let them make up their own minds. But certainly, I think, let's look at teacher standards again. As they're written, they're not bad, actually, but no one's taking any notice of it. And I go back to what I started, really. I'm sorry I rant on a bit, but I've had 47 years of this, you know, and we need to get back to basics as to what teaching is for. And if we're not providing children that can positively contribute to the society they're going to live in, we're doing something very wrong, which brings you to youth unemployment now, which is why all these children, and I'm guilty of it myself, we're horsewhipping these children towards university, when quite frankly, if we had a decent option that wasn't, people didn't look down their noses at, it would be better for them and better for the country.
Wise words from a man that's been there and got the T-shirt. Serge, thank you so much for joining us. Serge Safai is the executive head teacher of St Thomas the Apostle School, who have had great success in their outcomes. Why? Well, because of traditional values, old-fashioned teaching, common sense, not the rewriting of our history, and not the idea that 5-year-olds can change their sex in the classroom. It's not complicated, is it? It ain't rocket science. 7:35, this is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
.36, Mark Dolan with you on Talk Breakfast, in for Jeremy Kyle all of this week. Lovely to have your company. Thanks for the texts, the voice notes and the calls. Richard in Leicester on inflation. If you're just joining us, inflation has dropped to 3% from 3.4%, which is good news. We welcome it. Richard in Leicester says, Mark, inflation has come down by a gnat's bottom. Oh, yeah, it's a coincidence. It's Prime Minister's questions today, and Starmer will spout about inflation down and free school breakfasts. Nigel Evans, your Tory guest, is being silly to call the Conservatives who have joined Reform problem Tories. Tells me he's nothing but a windbag. That's Kevin in Barnstable. And the other message that's come in, Graham from Welling says, good morning, Mark. The former Deputy Speaker, your guest there, Nigel Evans, says Reform has too many ex-Tories who lost the last election. Well, what do you know? The rest of the Tories that lost the last election are, guess where? Still in the Tory party. John in Poole, good morning, Mark. Everyone keeps saying that Reform lacks experience to form a cabinet. Can someone tell me who in this pathetic, useless Labour government have any experience? Every single one of them are as useless as they come. Great show, says John. Well, you're so right about that. And of course, they've got no business experience, which is why they didn't realise that if you increase the minimum wage for young people, then they won't get employed. We now have the highest youth unemployment in the whole of Europe, which is going some because the Spanish economy is a hot mess, as is the French economy. Let's get a voice note on inflation from Big Mark. Take it away.
Morning, Mark. Mark from Bridge North, just driving to work. It's bright, it's not raining. It's Wednesday. Great. Only a quick one, mate, on inflation. 3%. Good news if it's gone down, but I don't see it. Just an example. I walked into my local pub last week, £5.10 for a nice pint of Guinness. I went in the following week, £5.80. That ain't 3%, mate. That sounds to me more like about 14%, something like that. It's 3%. I don't know where it is, mate. It's absolutely unbelievable, the price of stuff at the moment. All we talk about at work, the price of stuff. £10 for a piece of fish in the chip shop without chips, £5 for chips. It goes on and on. Ridiculous. Cheers, mate. Have a good.
Mark, you are so right about that. All of these figures, I mean, the inflation figure of 3%, forget about it. Mary called me a couple of weeks ago, £7 for a tub of butter. For goodness sake, you've quoted a few prices there, Mark. People are struggling. It is a tax on everyone. We've got the official taxes, which of course have gone up, up, up under Labour and previously the Tories. But we've got the real evil, wicked tax of inflation. Margaret Thatcher, when she achieved power in '79, her main focus was to bring inflation down. And that is what created the groundwork for her economic revolution. Let's talk about energy now, because Ed Miliband has attacked Reform UK's strategy on energy. He said Reform's energy surrender plan would sell out our energy security to fossil fuel interests, trash the countryside with fracking, cost hundreds of thousands of clean energy jobs, and cause bills to skyrocket. Well, let's unpick this in the company of a good friend of mine. Maxwell Marlowe is the Director of Research of the Adam Smith Institute, who have the temerity to crunch the numbers and get somewhere close to the truth. Maxwell, welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Well, I quite like the idea of selling out our energy security to fossil fuel interests, given the fact that we have vast oil and gas reserves on our own shores.
Absolutely. And guess what? When we talked about inflation earlier, I tell you what isn't falling in price. So what is falling in price, what is not inflating, is the price of oil.
Yeah.
It's now $60 a barrel. And that is coming down more and more. So some really good stuff out there when it comes to our energy security. But what is rising is, of course, the cost of renewables. Now, let's get this straight. Renewables are cheap. Wind is cheap, solar is cheap. What is expensive is the infrastructure, replanning the grid, the delivery costs. It's like if you go on Amazon and you see, you're ordering some wind power from somewhere, it's 99p. You think that's a great deal. Then you check the delivery price, it's £29, unlike, of course, oil and gas. So we really need to start thinking about, but do we actually want to just stop oil? I don't think so. I think what we want to do is have a mixed energy usage. We can drill into the North Sea, just as we did under Margaret Thatcher and also John Major, when we were actually exporting energy rather than importing it from, for example, the Norwegians. And guess what the Norwegians do? They drill it out of the same oil fields that we could be. So it's because of our geology, because of politics, not because of economics, that we are importing all of this energy and driving up our own costs.
Indeed, I think the Norwegians are pulling in about 40 billion quids a year from selling their oil and gas on the international energy markets. It's interesting, isn't it? There is a landing point here, Maxwell, which is we can all agree that we want to clean up the planet. We can all agree, Maxwell, that we want clean air. We can all agree that there's nothing wrong with a solar panel. I've got viewers and listeners who have got a solar panel on their house and it heats the building. Happy days. We can all agree that we have waves and therefore there's energy in the waves. We can all agree that the wind blows and maybe some of that is a resource too. But it's about an energy mix. And that's not what this government believes in. They are ideologically against fossil fuels and they're all in with renewables. Problem with that is they are flaky, they're unproven, you can't store the energy that they produce, and they are not the solution at the moment.
Absolutely. And you know what? Here's the thing. I'm totally in favour of energy abundance. I think we should have energy superabundance. It should be as cheap as water. And if you look at the Americans, for example, that's what they have because they've got a really big mix of energy. They use loads of solar. Obviously, a lot of America's very sunny.
Nevada,
Texas,
California, Arizona, happy days.
Exactly. And so if you ranked the UK in terms of, we did state by state, we looked at how much it costs per kilowatt in pence. We would be the 51st state in terms of cost. We are so expensive, more than Hawaii, which is mainly oil-based and geothermal, and it's in the middle of the blooming Pacific Ocean. right? So even though we're so close to Europe, even though we've got all of this oil and gas under our feet, it is so expensive. Now, here's the problem. It's because of the way in which we use our grid. So if you look at the Americans have lots of different energy markets, and they sell their energy, they price their energy at the point of production. So each oil well, each solar panel, each of them indicate a price. That allows there to be really good competition, so you can choose where you get your energy from. It brings the price down, as with any basic A-level economics, course will teach you. However, in the UK, we have a wholesale energy market, which essentially drives drives competition absolutely far into the distance. So now we're all paying the same energy. Now, a lot of what Ed Miliband talks about, he says, oh, well, reform wants to sell out our interests, and because the price of gas is what drives cost. He's not wrong saying that. Now, our strike price with oil and gas, that is what drives a lot of the cost. Now, the problem is, though, is the reason it's so expensive is because we rely on it so much for backup generation. It drives that cost up and up and up. Meanwhile, the rest of the system is paying subsidies that drives up the cost of renewables, and that creates further and further inflation. It is no wonder that people like Sir Jim Ratcliffe, one of the biggest investors in the UK through INEOS, is saying things like, oh, I can't invest anymore, I may have to close down my plants because of the price of energy. It is ideological, Mark. It doesn't make any sense to the average person. And that is why, fundamentally, we are going broke as a country.
Most definitely. And it also doesn't save the planet, because what we're doing is we are outsourcing our carbon emissions to countries that have lower standards than us, who are producing dirtier fuel. That's the great irony, so that we can tick a box, which, of course, is the big focus of this government. Now, Maxwell, before I let you go, you are a wizard on the economy. What do you make of inflation dropping to 3% from 3.4% in December? Obviously, we're not an echo chamber here. If good things happen under this Labour government, we will salute them. It's obviously welcome that inflation has fallen, but a lot of my viewers feel that this figure is not reflective of the lives they're living.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. And I was listening to your voice notes earlier. So when we look at inflation, CPI or Consumer Price Index is just a basket of different goods that we're seeing, right? So we're seeing deflation in some areas, the rate of inflation, the price actually falling. We can look at, for example, education is one because of the VAT price rises. And we compare that to other things, let's say the price of alcohol and restaurants and bars, that's going up. So CPI is an aggregate. So that's why we're seeing that. And let's not forget, we don't want a deflationary economy. We don't want prices to be falling, or else wages and incomes would fall as well. Wages and incomes aren't falling, so that we should welcome that. So we welcome that, a low rate of inflation. The reason for that is the economy is cooling down. Not enough economic activity is going. It's not driving prices. So that's why we're seeing this, disinflation is what we call it, slowing down of prices. It's still 3%. It's still over the Bank of England's target of 2.5%. The Bank of England has got a lot of questioning to do. Mark Carney, for some reason, is still in a job. So let's see where we go from here. But we welcome, lower inflation. However, it's all because our economy is stultified, and we can't, keep going on like this.
Yes, it sounds to me a bit like the doctor's got good news and bad news. The good news, Maxwell, is your blood pressure's coming down. The bad news is because the blood is draining from your body.
Well, my blood pressure never goes down, Mark, as I'm sure you know.
Well, listen, I tell you, you've got your finger on the pulse today, and your readings are very healthy indeed. Brilliant to have you on the show, Maxwell. We'll speak soon. Maxwell Marlowe is the Director of Research at the Adam Smith Institute. The whole point is we're all agreed we want clean air, and we want to look after this planet for future generations. I don't know anyone that's got a problem with an energy mix. And I mentioned the solar panels. It's fine. I mean, when I was at school, do you remember this, Mark Gale, lead engineer of the show, when you had a little solar panel on your calculator? Do you remember that, Damien? The Casio calculator had no one has a problem with that. What we want is common sense and an evidence base. This reminds me of COVID, right? It was like lockdowns, 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 vaccinate everybody, right? Where's the evidence base? There was none, which is why we're getting the consequences of the, in my view, COVID overreaction. Same thing now with the global warming. Yes, Christian, the planet is heating up. No word of a lie. But a bit like COVID, it's a question of how we respond, not whether it's happening. And I think a bit like COVID, I wonder whether the medicine will be worse than the disease. I think if you look at the cost of energy prices, that is quite provably the case. So much more to get through. Very excited about our next topic because it's about Reform UK. The reason why I make no apologies at 7:47 in the morning of discussing reform is because they are likely to be our next government. So are they ready for power? Has Nigel's new team got what it takes to save Britain? That's next.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday from 1.
My 12-year-old. Obviously, he won't be 12 then, he'll be 16, but if he's anything like he is now, he shouldn't be anywhere near an election booth. Do you sympathise with him? Is he the victim of the 24-hour news cycle we just spoke of?
I think his failings are internal. He's useless, incompetent, has no political judgment.
Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk.
Weekday afternoons from 1 o'clock. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
$7.50 Talk Breakfast. Happy Wednesday, one and all. A big couple of hours to come. And we bring you the breaking news that inflation has fallen to 3% from 3.4% in December. We welcome the news. If it's a good metric, then we will acknowledge that. Of course, Rachel Reeves will be celebrating this news. It could be evidence of a cooling economy, because really low inflation is only good if it tracks with high economic growth, which we don't have. But it does still mean a drop in the cost of living, potentially a drop in interest rates as well, which would make life easier for those with credit cards and mortgages. But this from Jan. Good morning, Mark. Maybe you can answer me this. I paid 99p for 10 small sausage rolls. Then I realised that there was only 8 in the packet for the same price. Is that type of inflation factored into the overall 3% inflation rate? I think not. This is happening across the board. 300 grams of almonds, $1.98. Suddenly it's 200 grams. I could go on. Jan, you're so right. It's a complete con. It's not honest, and I've got no confidence that shrinkflation, as you might describe it, is represented in that headline inflation figures. What I want to know is, what's the economy like for you? Tell me about your experience with the cost of living and prices. Give me your stories, give me your anecdotes, voice note, text, whatever works for you. Tell me what you're going through. 03444991000 is the number. Can Nigel Farage's new team save Britain? Live in the studio is Samara Gill, who is Talk's lead breakfast reporter. And of course, Samara, you were at the Reform press conference yesterday. Where did it take place?
It took place at Church House in Westminster, and as Tim Stanley said in the Telegraph yesterday, it was very much a game show vibe. You know, there was lots of blue lighting, Reform-esque. You know, it illuminated every time he picked a shadow cabinet member. It was a very dramatic affair. It wasn't the sort of bookshelf that you get in the Tory press conferences or the Labour ones, be it that. So yeah.
If it was a TV game show, was it a lot of masterminds or pointless celebrities and the weakest link?
That's a good way of summing it up, actually, yesterday. It was really interesting. I think when you see the dynamic actually in that auditorium, you can see that there are already some interesting fractures and different looks that were going on. And, you know, it seems like, you know, it's the old guard, which is your Zia Youssef, your Richard Tice, and then you had the new guard.
The Reform UK originals.
Yes, indeed, as they, I'm sure, as they would like to be known.
Reform UK Classic.
Yes, Reform UK Classic. And it was quite interesting because you obviously had Jenrick and Suella there, which are the two biggest defections, definitely recently.
Yeah.
And that very controversial appointment of Jenrick as Shadow Chancellor, which Zia wanted that position at some point, Richard Tice wanted that position at another point. So it seems like, is this a sort of joining exchange, a fee for what Jenrick has done and defected and come over? Because, I mean, his actual experience is kind of just being managerial director at Christie's. I don't exactly know what experience he has in terms of being in charge of the country's purse pocket. And I think in terms of the actual response within the room, that was the one that people were a bit uneasy about. But people like Zia Yusuf and Suella Braverman received really, really massive applause, big responses for their speeches. So I think it was sort of a sort of 50-50 situation where you had, you know, some highs and some lows. But I think Farage is really feeling the kind of slight hit that some of these defections have caused to his party.
There were a lot of incredibly dreary questions, including a ridiculous one from the Financial Times about private school, which we're going to come to shortly. But I've got to say, you asked a killer question. Take a listen to this.
Well, we are at Church House over in Westminster, and behind me is a pretty dramatic setup by Reform UK. They are set to announce their shadow cabinet. Who knows what this will involve? Just last week, Farage told me in an exclusive interview that he would not be putting anyone in his shadow cabinet who had previously failed at those positions. So, you know, we're not going to probably see a Suella Braverman as Home Secretary, but who knows who we will see as Home Secretary, which will be a very influential position in a Reform government that promises to stop the boats. I've got Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer behind me. That's also going to be announced. So we've got plenty of different announcements here as Reform prepares to form the next government.
We're looking for is genuine experience, but perhaps we can actually bring back to the world of business and energy somebody at the top of this department who's done well himself in the real world. So please welcome to the stage our head of BTE, Richard Tice.
Using the joy of our very valuable energy treasure, oil and gas, offshore, onshore, and having the courage to get rid of the madness of what we've politely coined net stupid zero.
But taking on the very responsible and important role of Shadow Chancellor is Robert Jenrick.
Well, thank you, Nigel. I didn't keep you waiting this time. Look, we all know that our economy isn't working.
And Zia Yusuf will take on the role of Shadow Home Secretary.
If you are in this country illegally right now and you are watching this, I want to be crystal clear. As Reform's Home Secretary, I will ensure that you are deported from these lands.
And not only will Suella Braverman take on education and skills, something that's been ignored for too long, but she will also take on equalities under this brief, which of course means the world of DEI.
Social and gender transitioning will be absolutely banned in all schools, no ifs, no buts.
Well, Shadow Prime Minister Nigel Farage basically announced that Richard Tice will be revolutionising energy in the United Kingdom. Robert Jenrick will be clutching the nation's chequebook. We've got Zia Yusuf will be protecting our borders and doing deportations, potentially en masse. There seemed to be some sort of fracture between how all the top five were feeling about each other, something palpable within the room. But for now, it's no longer a one-man band for Reform. This is their shadow cabinet.
Well, Samara, a comprehensive report there from you. What was the mood like? Was it optimistic? Did it feel like the Brave New World, the future?
You know, it did, and I've been to quite a few of these things now, and I do feel, though, that Farage was a little bit rattled by a lot of the Rupert Lowe news that had come over the weekend. I think, I don't know exactly what he's battling with, and I also know he's had a massive issue with just the media in general pressing him, but he was snappy, he was bitey towards them, and he wasn't taking any sort of ifs or buts when he was taking questions from the media. And yeah, there was a sort of quite got nothing to lose vibe about him in some ways, which I think I like. That's kind of top-notch Farage when you see him in his element. But it was an interesting sort of thing. I think there were lots of questions about the new party that's coming into the wings. Obviously, we saw that poll yesterday that showed that no one really knows who Rupert Lowe is on the streets. It's very much a Twitter sphere thing, but I think it's shaken him a little bit.
Yeah. I agree, and I think that he gave Rupert too much publicity in a sense. I think he could have probably just swatted it away like a fly and said, you know, Rupert Lowe can do whatever he likes. We've got a project to change Britain. The end.
Yeah.
You know, I think I need to get in there. I need Nigel's ear. But don't you think that's... Instead, he's like, well, no one knows who he is. And, you know, you're almost elevating your opponent by describing them.
Totally. He gave them the oxygen of publicity there, and it's quite interesting when it comes to someone like Farage. I think he does know how hard it is to build a political party, and I think he basically wished them luck in that respect. It's very easy to put something out on Twitter, much harder to build a political movement that he's trying to do. I mean, he's trying.
Well, exactly. Michelle is not happy, though. Michelle says, good morning, Mark. I never thought I'd say this, but I've lost faith in reform. The line-up and Nigel admitting why Rupert was gotten rid of has shocked me.
It was, as I said yesterday, he was rattled. It was a catty response. I don't think, from a PR perspective, it was the right thing to say.
Nigel needs to cool it.
Well, does he?
Why is he so feisty sometimes?
He was probably...
Does he need to take a chill pill?
I don't know. He's had it in the neck from the media, from the people over the weekend.
You're right.
This is someone who is... It seemed like he was a bit at his wit's end yesterday, but Shadow Cabinet, very interesting, and who knows if it'll be there in the years to come.
Samara, elite level reporting. Keep it Talk Breakfast.
Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson.
We've now had another resignation from number 10. The plot is sickening, the noose is tightening.
His failings are internal. He's useless, incompetent, has no political judgment.
This is all part of Starmer's reset, getting rid of his inner circle. So Chris Wormold, we think fairly reluctantly, has stepped down.
What an absolutely crazy week for Keir Starmer. His second cabinet secretary, gone. His third chief of staff, gone. His fourth director of communications, gone.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
3 minutes past 8. Happy Wednesday, one and all. Wakey, wakey, rise and shine. Lovely to have your company. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle all of this week. And Generation Jobless, as Britain's youth unemployment now reaches the highest level in the whole of Europe. Have Labour reawoken the old enemy of unemployment? And could it be U-turn number 15, 16, 17? We've lost count as the government rethink plans to increase the minimum wage for young workers. Meanwhile, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves is resisting extra spending on defence. So is Britain now less safe under this Labour government? And what do you make of the breaking news this morning that inflation has fallen from 3.4% to 3%? That's almost a half a percentage point. But are you feeling it in your wallet? What is your real world experience of the economy? Let me know. My number is 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222, or leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. Sharon in Staffordshire has messaged the show. Mark, I go into the supermarket all the time. The prices are higher and higher, yet the products are smaller and smaller. These are the issues that this useless government should be addressing. How can one be paying more for something that's smaller? This is fraud and deception. John in Rugby, good morning, Mark, says, John, inflation down to 3% does not mean the cost of living is down. It's just not increasing as quickly. Prices are still rising, but a bit slower, that's all. John, you're so right. Yesterday, I got a tub of yoghurt because, folks, as you know, my body's a temple. If you're watching the show on YouTube, right, search, talk, and up we pop. And the bottom line is that I like a bit of yoghurt. And you get that Greek yoghurt now, and it is £4 for 450 grams. £4. That's wild, isn't it? Give me your anecdotes about the cost of living. I'm delighted to say, reacting to the big stories of the day now, joins us live on the line, the columnist at the Mail on Sunday, Dan Hodges. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning.
Dan, we've got to give credit where it's due. Inflation has fallen. This is good news for the Chancellor, but my viewers and listeners are not feeling it.
No, and for a number of reasons. I mean, as you say, it is a bit of positive news, and goodness knows we need more of that. But I think there's a number of things. I mean, 3% inflation is still significantly above the Bank of England's own inflation target. It's historically quite high, well, very high historically, given what we've seen in previous years.
Yeah.
The key thing about this inflation figure, which people need to take into account, is this is inflation running at 3% in the context of an economy that is at best flatlining. This is not where you would expect or want the economy to be and inflation to be, given we have stagnant growth, if we've got any growth at all.
Falling inflation is of little value if that's not tied in with economic growth.
Yes, I mean, obviously, as we saw, when was it, a week and a half ago, we had the release of some of Wes Streeting's text messages to Peter Mandelson, in which they both agreed that the government doesn't have a growth strategy. And I think, we didn't actually need the leak of the messages or the release of the messages to tell us that. I mean, as I said, this is positive news, but the fact that the cost of living is going up in a stagnant economy at a slightly lower rate is not going to be something that's going to have people breaking out the champagne if they could even afford it.
Do you think that the Prime Minister may regret pitching this Labour government as the government for working people, given the fact that the old enemy, Dan, of unemployment has returned, particularly youth unemployment, which is now the highest in Europe?
Well, I think the government's argument to be sort of the government and Labour's claim to be the party of working people was comprehensively destroyed in the last budget, where obviously we had months, if not years, in the run-up to the budget of ministers pledging, from the Prime Minister and the Chancellor down, pledging not to raise taxes on working people. And obviously in the last budget, that's precisely what they've done. So, I mean, in a sense, the party's credibility in relation to working people has already been destroyed. But you're right. I mean, this is. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when I think Labour MPs and Labour ministers are going to start to become very concerned about.
Well, yes,
right?
because it potentially, doesn't it, Dan, consigns a generation of young people to life on the dole.
Yeah, and obviously that would be yet another of this government's broken promises, and that is the fundamental thing that is currently, undermining the government. People are contrasting the sort of the warm words and the bold promises that were made before the election with the reality of what people experiencing, and this is the constant. Labour and Keir Starmer were elected on a mandate of change. Now the spectre of rising youth unemployment specifically and rising unemployment generally isn't sort of redolent of change. It's taking people back to some of the darker periods of the 1980s.
Is it a cruel irony that this is a government more than any other, Dan, that needs economic growth, because any left-leaning progressive administration exists to spend money? That's what Labour governments are there to do, to pump money into the NHS, welfare, all the rest of the public sector. And yet it's the very policies that they've enacted which have harmed that ability to do what they're there to do.
Well, I mean, I think all governments require political growth and significant political growth. Otherwise, no government can pursue its agenda.
Sure, but Mrs. Thatcher reduced taxes and got out of the way.
Yes, she reduced taxes, but obviously she did stimulate the economy, and that's the key thing. I mean, the one thing we do have to say, we have to be slightly careful of this idea. I bend the knee to no man or woman in my criticism of this government. Let's not try and pretend, though, that before Labour got into power, we were living through an era of milk and honey.
Sure.
The previous administration, the economy basically, was on its knees as well, and that's a significant part of why ultimately the Tories were ejected from office. I mean, actually, if you look traditionally politically, the Tories have always been perceived as the good stewards of the economy, and Labour, as you say, were the people who were supposed to protect public services. Now, the reality is, at the moment, Labour is not doing either. And that's why they've got the political problems they've got.
Most definitely. Can we talk about allegations surrounding Labour Together, which is, of course, Sir Keir Starmer's favourite think tank? It's the think tank that helped propel him to power. Allegations that figures within Labour Together connived and plotted to discredit journalists who were looking into the funding of that very organisation.
Yes, I mean, very, very serious, not least because it wasn't just sort of abstract figures. It was obviously, it was an organisation that was primarily formed to deliver the Labour leadership to Keir Starmer and then usher him into power. And secondly, the people who were running that, and a number of the people who were running the organisation at the time are now senior figures within the government. I mean, this is, and again, I've been around politics a long time, and I understand the game's the game. But this, some of the stuff that has been reported, I mean, not just, attempts to discredit journalists. I mean, we all dish it out, so, we should be able to take it to an extent. But, the smearing of one particular journalist because according to the reports, he was Jewish, the attempts to claim journalists were somehow being duped by information that had been hacked by Moscow. I mean, this is pretty low stuff. But as ever, what is the response we've had from the Prime Minister? We've run through the gamut of Keir Starmer's, responses to all these crises. Firstly, to claim he didn't know anything about it. Secondly, to not actually do anything about it. I mean, it's, we've had no action taken against any of the people alleged to have been behind this. And thirdly, the one thing that Keir Starmer says he's done is to appoint the Cabinet Office to look into it. Now, Cabinet Office investigations are becoming something of a joke. Obviously, it was the Cabinet Office investigations were supposedly all over Peter Mandelson, the Peter Mandelson appointment, and yet mysteriously found nothing. One of the ministers involved in this is himself a Cabinet Office minister. So in a sense, the Cabinet Office here is investigating itself. And as I said a couple of days ago, for the life of me, I don't understand why the Cabinet Office is investigating something that was essentially an internal Labour Party issue. But again, Keir Starmer has adopted the approach, see no evil, hear no evil, which is, as I say, his basic modus operandi, it seems.
It seems to be. A quick word on the Chagos Islands and a cracking exclusive from your paper, Dan. A close friend of Sir Keir Starmer reportedly shared an £8 million pot for his work negotiating the Chagos Islands giveaway deal to cede the territory to Mauritius. Philippe Sands, KC, who describes himself as a great friend of the Prime Minister, pocketed his share of the sum while acting as chief legal counsel to Mauritius between 2010 and 2014. Another deeply embarrassing headline for the Prime Minister.
Yes, but I'm going to be completely honest, and I've said it a number of times on this programme and others, I am not one of these people who is a Chagos obsessive. I think, before I came on air, it was being reported the United States and Donald Trump have formally signed off on the Chagos deal. This is a deal that was initially negotiated by the Conservative Party. It was negotiated with the Joe Biden administration. It's now being implemented by a Labour government with the approval and blessing of Donald Trump. I'm sure people are going to keep arguing about the Chagos Islands, but the reality is successive British administrations and successive American administrations have all seen the wisdom in doing this deal.
Zia Youssef as the nominal Shadow Home Secretary, Richard Tice, Energy and Business, Suella Braverman, basically tearing up DEI and looking after education, Robert Jenrick, Shadow Chancellor. Can Nigel Farage's new team save Britain?
Not if they don't get into government, and I'm not entirely sure, and I've written about this. I think Nigel Farage is now making a number of quite serious mistakes. I think that this ongoing parade of former Tory retreads is starting to undermine Reform's claim to represent change themselves and to be different from the political mainstream. Yes, it was a very slick launch yesterday. Yes, there's a much better degree of professionalisation in terms of some of Reform's presentation. But the reality is, if you look at the opinion polls, for the best part of 7-8 months now, Reform, after breaking through and surging, are effectively flatlining. And we had an interesting moment yesterday when the bookmakers Ladbrokes announced that for the first time in well over a year, they no longer have Reform as favourites to win the most seats at the next general election. Now, obviously, that's a nice problem to have in a sense for Reform, because the idea of them having the most seats would have been unthinkable, a couple of years ago. But I actually do think that that Nigel Farage has some problems now, and I do think Nigel Farage is starting to make some mistakes.
Although, by attracting the likes of Braverman and Jenrick into the Reform project, first of all, he's taking, as we know from the stats on Conservative Home website, the two most popular Tory figures within the Conservative movement. So won't Farage pull in some of the 5 million people that voted Tory at the last election if he brings in some of these, Tory also-rans? And what about that triumph of getting the Prime Minister to scrap his plans to cancel elections via legal action? I mean, surely that's a feather in Farage's cap, and surely that will register itself in the polls in the days ahead.
Well, I think there are two separate points there. I mean, it may well be that Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman are popular within the Conservative Party, but I'm not entirely sure they're popular within the country. And this is the fundamental strategic.
They don't have to be, do they? Farage just needs people that voted Tory and people that voted Reform in July 2024, and then a few ex-Labour supporters, and he's home and hosed.
Well, he needs a few more people than people who voted Tory last time, because there weren't people who voted Tory last time.
That's true.
So I think, I think what he needs to be doing is broadening, expanding his band and his brand. And as I say, seeing like bussing in these Tory retreads isn't really the way to do it, in my view. But on the latter point, no, absolutely, that was a feather in Nigel Farage's cap, although it has to be said it was a feather that was very firmly placed there by Keir Starmer himself, who was again shown, just staggering incompetence in terms of how he governs the country. I mean, setting aside the morality of trying to cancel the polls, as he said, we've got a very important by-election coming up in Gorton next week, a vital by-election, and he just handed Nigel Farage and Reform a PR coup at the best.
It's time for the truth.
The worst for life.
Dan, I hear what you're saying. Do you not think, though, that the share price of Kemi Badenoch is a bit too high, just given the fact that, OK, she's great on PMQs and her budget response was outstanding, and I'll give you that. And I enjoyed your coverage of that budget response at the time in the Mail on Sunday. But Farage is showing leadership, isn't he? Love him or loathe him. Ahead of the curve on illegal immigration. He was talking about the boats 10 years ago. Ahead of the curve on net zero. He always said it was a waste of money. Only the Tories now late to the party on that. Ahead of the curve on ECHR, which again the Conservatives have finally caught up on. Wokery in our public institutions. The issue you've got is that out there in the country, it's Farage that's moving the dial, not Kemi Badenoch.
But I think you've put your finger on it. I mean, you just ran through Nigel Farage's greatest hits there, but they were his greatest hits, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
He needs some new material.
He needs some new material, and he needs to now start to demonstrate that he can make the transition from being someone who articulates the nation's concerns to having a practical solution to those concerns. And as I say, the team he is assembling around it is primarily a team primarily comprised of the people who, by Nigel Farage's own admission, were complicit in breaking the country when they were last in government. I think, obviously, the key thing for Kemi Badenoch is she staunched the bleeding. Most people thought that in a couple of months' time, with the local elections, that would be moving time for Kemi Badenoch, and she would be ejected by her party. Ironically, she is now in a much, much, much stronger position, obviously, than Keir Starmer, not least because Robert Jenrick, the person who most people thought would be a challenger, has himself quite clearly thought, look, there's not going to be a vacancy for me in the Tory party. I might as well jump ship. She's obviously got a long way to go. But remember, this is the thing about politics. Politics is suddenly being concertinaed to an incredible degree. It's only 18 months ago the Tories were bodily thrown out of office with one of the worst results in their history.
Yeah.
It is obviously going to take time for them to recover. But no, I mean, I think, and I say this as somebody who was initially very critical of Kemi Badenoch's leadership, I think out of all the main party leaders, she is the one who has been performing the best over the last 2 or 3 months.
Brilliant to see you, Dan. Always look forward to your column in the Mail on Sunday. Dan Hodges there, commentator at the Mail on Sunday. What do you think? Is Dan right that actually the Reform UK project has stalled? What do you make of his new lineup, his new team? Can they save Britain? Let me know your thoughts. 03444991000. A quick voice note, if you don't mind, Mark, on that. This is Tony on Reform.
Good morning, Mark. Tony from Worcester. Just with regards, Mr. Farage, I think give the man a chance. He stood up for democracy yesterday. He got 4.5 million people that vote at the local council elections. I think the man cares about the country. Clearly, Keir doesn't. All he cares about is power, doesn't he? He just wants to stay in. He thought he was going to lose a load of seats, and he tried to swerve the elections. Going forwards, I think give Nigel a chance.
Yes, I have to say I agree with you, Tony. I think that Dan is very pessimistic about where Reform are at the moment. I think that their support publicly is underrepresented in the polls, and I think there are plenty of shy reformers out there that will surprise the establishment at the next election. Becky says, good morning, Mark. Could you wish my partner Chaz happy birthday? He's up at 4 a.m. to go and clean schools, and that's not an easy job because we know how filthy Kids are, don't we, Marky? Oh, my goodness. Can I just say, happy birthday, Chaz. You are a legend. May God bless you and have an excellent day. And I hope that Becky's going to give you a lovely meal this evening. You'll do something nice together. You obviously won't go out for dinner, because who the hell can afford to do that these days? It's going to be a ready meal, innit? Because we're all skint. How about lovely Rach in Newcastle? Good morning, Rachel. Good morning, Mark. She says, pre-Christmas, I could get 24 tins of Chappie dog food for my dog, $27.99 from Home Bargains. At Pets at Home, it was $30.99. Now Home Bargains doesn't have stock. Pets at Home are charging $37.79, and I have to buy dog food. So it's gone from $27.99 to $37.79. That's a tenner more. That's not 3% inflation, is it? Mary's in Hemel Hempstead. Good morning, Mary.
Morning, Mark.
Mary, before we get to your point about Robert Jenrick, you made a name for yourself on this show a couple of weeks ago when you told me that you'd paid the best part of £7 for a tub of Lurpak butter.
£6.98.
$6.98, not that you're bitter. Mary, what do you think about this inflation figure? We're told it's all sunny uplands now, 3%. Are you feeling it?
No, not really. I don't think it's anything.
Now, Mary, you're not happy with Bobby J, Robert Jenrick, Shadow Chancellor. You've got questions. What are they?
Well, for a start, the man is a career politician and he's never been in business, in finance, and I think he's in the wrong place. If Nigel wants him in the Parliament, that's up to him. But I think he's in the wrong position. He's been going hell for leather for immigrants, illegal immigrants. Why not make him the Home Secretary? And Zia Yusuf, as a businessman, he should be in the finance chat.
Mary, you raise an interesting point. I also wonder whether Richard Tice would be a shout for Chancellor as well. You raise a good point. Tice and Zia Yusuf have both successfully run businesses. So what do you think? Is Robert Jenrick the weak link in the chain, or is it his knowledge of government that makes him the right person for number 11? Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Mary, thank you for that. Keep those messages coming. So much more to come, folks. You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 8:25. Next up, this is rather significant, let me tell you. Youth unemployment through the roof, the highest in Europe. It's a national scandal. We've got the inside story. You will not believe it. That's next.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:29 Talk Breakfast. I hope you're well. Mark Dolan with you in all week for Jeremy Kyle. Inflation has come down to 3%, which we welcome, but is it an example of a depressed economy? Bob says, Mark, inflation, well, with unemployment at the highest, it means that those poor souls haven't got any spare income to spend, which results in lower inflation. End of. So, how about this? Reform's answer to a useless chancellor is Robert Jenrick, a failed Tory with no economic ability. Nice to see Farage finally admit he tried to destroy Rupert Lowe because he didn't agree with the Farage opinion. Do we really want to replace one dictator with another? On inflation, Chris, good morning, Mark. Just looking at my electricity prices so far this month, my bill, I used, what I've used so far, £15 standing charge. Makes it go up to 26 quid. So that's 15 quid up to 26 quid. Massive robbery by the Green Madness. That is a tenner extra. And Chris, I've got no doubt that is a tenner you ain't got. Listen, we'll get to more of your thoughts on that in just a moment. But a really great piece in the Sun newspaper today about a possible war on fun. This is a wild story. Holidays are for relaxing, not taxing. That's right, folks. I'll give you the inside story. Let's speak to Alan Simpson, who is the CEO of UK Hospitality. Great piece in the Sun today, Alan. Good morning.
Morning. How are you?
I'm very well. Great to have you with us. What's the story here?
Well, the story is that last year, in writing and to MPs in the House of Commons, the government promised they wouldn't introduce a holiday tax. They've caved to pressure and have done another U-turn, and they're going to. It's £500 million on the cost of domestic holidays that we take in the UK, an average of maybe £100 to £140 for a family taking a 2-week break, and I would suggest it's money that none of us have.
Well, that's right, 140 quid extra. That could be 2 nights of accommodation in a B&B that families have got to find.
Well, exactly. Or it could be money that they don't spend in the local fish and chip shop by the caravan park, or it might be a restaurant dinner that they don't have out next to the hotel. So it won't only be the accommodation providers and the families who are footing the bill. It'll be anybody who makes their money from the tourism sector.
Alan, I'm so sorry. I'm really confused here at 8:31. But is it not good for the economy for people to go on holiday in this country? Can you help me with that?
Well, you'd think so. Hospitality employs 3.5 million people in the UK. That's a lot of people. You know, you just talked about youth unemployment. We saw 80,000 young people's jobs disappear in a single quarter, didn't we? That's the population of Rugby. That's a whole town full of people. Which sector is employing these young people? Which sector is providing routes into work and careers? Well, it's tourism and hospitality, isn't it? And I think, you know, we're worried about the cost of living. I certainly don't want to have to spend another £140 on a holiday in the UK. And for a lot of people, it might make them think, well, maybe Spain or Italy looks like better value. You know, we will be pushing one of our main industries abroad.
Indeed, and one of my callers yesterday on the show, Alan, pointed out that when we say that something is going to cost, let's say, for this example, £140 extra on a holiday, well, really it's £200, £250, because you've got to earn 250 quid to find that 140 by the time you've paid your taxes. So, you know, the figures here are colossal, and it's bad news for those much-loved venues that have been around for generations. Little small hotels, small pubs, little restaurants, cafes that may now go under.
I think that's right. And by the way, the government absolutely know this is a bad idea. There is a reason why instead of announcing this as part of the budget with the Chancellor, it was handed to a Secretary of State, and that Secretary of State thought, I don't want to talk about this publicly, I'm going to shove out a written statement to the House of Commons. I don't think, by the way, that if the government wanted to put an extra 5% tax on the steel industry or the car industry or on Canary Wharf, they would think that they can get away with sneaking that out. We just won't let them get away with it.
Well, Alan, I'm supposed to be fair and balanced on this show, and can I tell you that whenever you're on, I'm going to be really unbalanced and say that I am blindly for UK hospitality at the expense of almost everything else. As you mentioned, it's a big part of our economy and national income. It's a part of our way of life. It's our traditions. It's our culture, a pub, a bite to eat, all the rest of it. It's a massive employer, as you mentioned, particularly young people, school leavers, pulling pints down their local. So that is really, really critical. The other issue that we've got is that it just is counterproductive. It's going to shrink the economy if we have this attitude towards hospitality. And let's not forget, you guys got a hammering during the pandemic as well, when you were forced to yield to those rather draconian COVID restrictions. So, you know, you've been here before, plus inflation is killing your industry too.
Well, it is, and so are successive budgets. We saw national insurance contributions designed so that if you're working part-time at the start of your career, you lost nearly half of your pay rise this year to NICs, whereas you lost maybe 20% if you're earning 150. So it's directly these sorts of jobs which are affected. Business rates went through the roof. Hotels saw their rates go up by 115%, which is extraordinary. You know, we are in a situation where one of the largest employers of young people or people working part-time routes into management roles for people who left school, perhaps. You know, these sorts of jobs are going to continue to be lost.
Well, this is it. And I just, sorry to interrupt you, but, you know, going back to the pandemic, Alan, you know, the reason why I mention it, I know it's old news and everyone's moved on, I get it. But it was so tragic, wasn't it, to see those businesses go to the wall. And I just felt that at the time, and that was under the Tories, by the way, that the UK hospitality sector was seen as a disposable industry. And I feel that that remains the attitude in Whitehall today, whoever's in charge.
Well, I totally agree. And by the way, businesses haven't forgotten the pandemic. They're still having to pay back the debts that they incurred at the time. And I talk to businesses all the time who can't invest because the interest rates are so high for them. But you're absolutely right. Hospitality is consistently treated by governments without the respect it deserves. 3.5 million people. 3.5 million people.
Wow.
And in a lot of communities across the UK, this is the industry. This is the export sector. This is the way that money comes in, and it's the way that people have routes into work. And I think, you know, you look at what this government's doing with its industrial strategy, which you could basically characterise as there's 8 sectors we care about, and everybody else, I'm sorry, you have to pay the cost. Is we know leading to job losses. 100,000 people have lost their jobs in hospitality in a year.
The other reason why I'm worried, Alan, I'll let you go in a second. I know you're on a tight schedule, but the other issue I've got with hospitality is it's critical infrastructure, isn't it? It is social infrastructure. It's the hub of the community, the little restaurant, the cafe, the local boozer, the family hotel. And when that infrastructure is gone, it doesn't come back.
No, and you look at high streets up and down the country which are hollowing out because business rates are too high, VAT is too high, the cost of hiring people is too high, and their consumers just can't pay the extra. And I think, you know, we have to recognise, frankly, let's put it this way. If I was a Labour MP and I was staring down the barrel of the polling that you just talked about, I would want 3 things. I would want my kids to be able to get a Saturday job. I would want my high street to be open, and I would want to be able to afford fish and chips on a Friday night. And all 3 of those right now are in trouble.
Most definitely. Do you see things changing anytime soon? It's probably unfair, isn't it, to clobber the government exclusively. They haven't exactly inherited an economic surplus. Is there any defence that can be made on the part of the Prime Minister and the Chancellor that the country's broke, every industry is going to have to shoulder the cost, and hospitality is no different?
Well, I agree with half of that. The country is in a difficult financial situation. I wouldn't want to be Chancellor. There's a reason I'm not Chancellor. But look, hospitality is not being asked to carry its fair share. It's being asked to carry other people's fair share as well. The average hospitality business pays 80% of its profits in tax. The average bank pays 35% of their profits in tax.
Wow.
We are not paying our fair share. We are paying other people's fair share too.
Alan, a real privilege to have you on the show, and what a great piece in The Sun today. Do join us again soon. If you can, grab yourself a copy of The Sun. The headline from Alan Simpson's piece is Levy's £14 billion threat to industry. Holidays are for relaxing, not taxing. The possible extra cost of 140 quid on a family holiday in the UK. Isn't the argument that we're supposed to go on holiday here and spend our money in this country? Well, the message from the government at the moment is, well, you might as well go to Tenerife or Dubai or Dublin or anywhere except your own blinking country. I've got a voice note on the Conservatives from Johnny. Take it away, Johnny.
Morning, Mark. It's Johnny in the van. Just listening to your conversation there with Nigel Evans. He talks about Kemi Badenoch leading the Tories, and I also think she's a great leader for the Tories. I think she's a great leader for the Conservatives. But I think she came far too late. She should have got in 3 or 4 years ago when they got rid of Boris. If she'd have come in then, they could have saved the Conservatives. They could have saved this country. It's just too late for the Conservatives now. Their time is gone. It's reform all the way now. And that's sad for Kemi, because I think she's missed her opportunity, and I think she would have made a great PM. Great show, mate. Keep it up.
Johnny, I agree with you. I like Kemi Badenoch. I like her. I think she's great. But it's those people sat behind her, the incredibly poorly disguised Liberal Democrats who call themselves Conservatives, who have destroyed the country. And she is a Conservative, and she's fearless and she's brave. You know what she should do, Johnny? She should join Reform UK. What about that? Wouldn't that break the internet? If Kemi goes, you know what, I've led the Tories and I've just seen how incredibly left-wing they are. I'm out. That would be the mic drop, and then we could save Britain. What would you think? If you are a Reform UK supporter, would you take Kemi? Because if I was a Reform UK supporter, I would. And I'd ban the rest of them because they are more left-wing than Shea Blinken Guevara. Anne says, regarding inflation, strawberry-flavoured water was 50p, now 1.25. Quite shocking. Ian, though, he's got some good news. He said, Mark, with a lot of hard work and a lot of saving, I can just about afford the deposit on a Mars bar. You couldn't make it up. 8:40, Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. .41, you're listening to Talk Breakfast. So much to get through today, a massive news agenda. Front page of the Sun newspaper, pressure ramps up. 7 UK forces on Epstein case, Lolita flight logs checked. Check this out, right? So the headline, Cops in Andy sex probe. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was last night facing a criminal probe into sex trafficking claims. At least 7 police forces are examining new evidence from the Jeffrey Epstein files. Essex police are assessing claims that women were flown to Stansted on his Lolita Express private jet. We're talking about vast numbers of flights here, and of course it demonstrates that there's one set of rules for us and one set of rules for the elite. You've got a millionaire entrepreneur in the late Epstein who was flying people in on private jets into Stansted, but not the usual checks and balances that you and I have got to go through. And it could well be that Stansted Airport was used as a focal point of this trafficking enterprise. It's an absolute scandal. The big problem is that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is at the heart of this, because these flights were coming into the UK and these women were reportedly and allegedly heading not just to Andrew's accommodation. We're talking about the Windsor estate and Buckingham Palace, no less. How much did King Charles know? He is the CEO of the monarchy, of the royal family, and the firm will have been aware that Andy was wrong, and they'd have to be, because These women are coming into Buckingham Palace. They don't just wander in. They don't hit the buzzer like buzzer number 11 and go, hi, is Randy Andy in? You've got passes, you've got security, you've got X-ray scanners, you've got cops, you've got butlers, you've got courtiers, you've got bodyguards, for goodness sake. So if the firm knew what Andy was doing, then the king knew. Does that mean he's got to go? 0344 499 1000. We'll get to your feedback on that in just a moment. Here's a voice note from Paula on the Chagos Islands. Let's not forget now that several British Chagossians have gone back to their islands. And breaking news this morning, they're now in hiding on one of the islands because British patrol boats are searching for them. We're trying to connect with some of that group that have gone to the Chagossian Islands very shortly on the show. Let's take a voice note on that from Paula.
Morning, Mark. Great show as usual. Just a note for Dan Hodges. He says that successive governments and administrations can see the merits in the Chagos deals. Well, can they tell the rest of us what the merits are? Because none of us can understand it. And I'm absolutely apoplectic about it. What in the world are we thinking about? Nobody wins in this. Well, nobody in this country, apart from Starmer and his mates, it seems. I can't understand it. Somebody needs to start delving into this. What's happening to journalism in this country? Thanks, Mark. Paula in Liverpool.
Paula, you're right. You are right to question what's going on and what has indeed happened to journalism in this country. That was an important voice note. Keep them coming. Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor. How much did the King know? And if he knew even 1% of what was going on, is his position as monarch tenable? Amanda says, good morning, Mark. The Andrew scandal engulfing the royals at the moment would actually be an ideal time for the King to step down in a dignified manner. Gaz in Scunthorpe says, good morning, Mark. Our late beloved Queen paid the majority of the money to Virginia Giuffre herself, probably wrongly advised, but she was protective of her favourite son. Well, that's why I had to disagree with my very good friend Rafe Hadel-Mancu this morning, who's a historian and constitutional expert who was foursquare behind the King. But the bottom line is that surely if the Queen is writing a cheque for 12 million quid, she might be thinking, who's this money for? What's it going towards? And what is the background to this? Why am I handing over £12 million, which even for the late Queen was a fair chunk of change? I think you'll agree. Gaz in Scunthorpe says, our late beloved Queen paid the majority of the money herself, probably wrongly advised, but she was protective of her favourite son. That was so good, I thought I'd read it out twice. Emma says, good morning, Mark. The crown should have gone straight to William. The King has no backbone and can't cope with any crisis or confrontation. He's proved that time and time again with Andrew and bratty Harry and this awful government. Emma, thank you for that. You're listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 8:46.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
As something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at. I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:49 Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. The Reform UK mayoral candidate for London joins us live at 9 a.m. Nigel Farage's new team, can they save Britain? Is Zia Youssef, Robert Jenrick, Suella Braverman, are they the answer to Britain's problems? Let me know your thoughts, 03444 499 1000. Breaking news this morning, Chagossians who have returned to the island are now hiding due to British patrol boats searching for them. Well, I'm assuming they'll be the same authorities tackling the crisis in the Channel, so let's speculate as to whether they'll be as successful there. And we have more breaking news, which is that inflation has fallen to 3% from 3.4% in the month of December. Let's get reaction from one of the most authoritative voices on economic matters in the country, Paul Johnson, former director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Good morning, Paul, and some much needed good news for my viewers and listeners and for the Chancellor.
Yes, inflation down a bit this month. Actually, food inflation has come down, which is going to be very helpful for many people. As ever, it's a bit of a mixed picture. There are some areas where prices are still going up pretty quickly. Services in general, inflation there has only come down very slightly, and they're going up more quickly than other things. And of course, it's always important to remind people that inflation coming down doesn't mean that prices are going down. It just means they're going up less quickly than they were. And at 3%, we're still well above what the Bank of England's target of 2% actually is.
Can we reasonably expect that we will hit that target in, let's say, the next 12 months, Paul?
We should do, or we should get pretty close over this year, partly because of some one-off things that the government is doing. So it's frozen rail fares and prescriptions, and it's taken some of the environmental levies and other levies off our energy bills this year. Now, the problem is that those are one-off effects. So there is at least a risk that come next year, either they'll have to do the same thing again, which gets very expensive, or we might see inflation creep up again. Though I think their hope is that by getting it down this year, people's expectations of inflation next year will change, and that will keep a lid on inflation. But hopefully we're over the worst of this considerable period of inflation way above target.
Paul, is there ever an argument that falling inflation is fool's gold, given that some would argue it implies and suggests falling economic activity and a depressed economy?
Well, it can be a symptom of a depressed economy if people haven't got money to spend, if shops are struggling to sell stuff so they have to keep prices down, then it can be a symptom of a depressed economy. But equally, it can be a symptom of a very well-functioning economy where inflation is under control and everything else is going okay. I think we've got a little bit of both at the moment. I mean, part of the reason that inflation's coming down, and it's related to the job figures that we saw yesterday, unemployment's going up, the job market's looking a bit weak, so people have got less money in their pockets. So I think there are some negative aspects here, but I do think there are some positive aspects in that we are getting out of this horrible spiral we've been in really since that energy price crisis all the way back 4 or 5 years ago. And that should give us some stability. And that stability at least gives the economy a chance to start growing better in the future.
With anemic growth at the moment, Paul, obviously a high cost of government borrowing as well, and growing unemployment. Where's the smoking gun? Is it those two rather controversial budgets that we've seen under this new administration, or is it a legacy of 14 years of Conservative rule?
Well, I think it's all of those things, and to some extent it's still, I mean, unbelievably, the legacy of what happened nearly 20 years ago now. We had that financial crisis back in 2008. Nothing has gone right since then. We've got a legacy from COVID, we've got a bit of a legacy from Brexit, but where we've also got a government that's come in and really significantly increased taxes, particularly on employment. And I think one of the reasons that we've got this particularly high level of youth unemployment, I think that's the bit that's really worrying, is that those particularly affected young people in low paid occupation, because actually, astonishingly for a Labour government, they really layered the big impact of that tax on those people who are being paid the least.
Do you have faith in the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, to steer the ship out of these choppy waters economically, Paul?
That's a big question. I think she's doing her best. I think she's perfectly sensible. But I think the problem is it's not very clear where she's steering the ship toward. I mean, remember just over a year ago in her first budget, she said she's absolutely focused on growth. She barely mentioned growth in the last budget a couple of months ago, and she said she was really focused on the cost on the cost of living. And what she's done on taxes and so on, I'm afraid doesn't give us any sense of where she's going next. There's no sense of what the strategy is. Although, to be fair, that was equally true of all of her Conservative predecessors.
Although you're saying or suggesting that she's perfectly sensible in her policies, do you not think that the national insurance tax raid from that now notorious Halloween budget has depressed economic growth and fed unemployment? Doesn't sound very sensible to me.
Well, she made a political judgment, didn't she? And I mean, I think it was not the right economic judgment for sure. I think she made the judgment she had to raise taxes, as frankly all of us were telling before the election that none of the parties were telling the truth about what they'd have to do. And don't forget, before the election, Labour said they would raise taxes and spending by about 8 billion each. And what they did in their first budget was raise spending by 70 billion. So they said 8 and they did 70. And on taxes, they raised them by 40 billion. And she decided that if she was going to do that, then the least politically damaging would be to increase those employer national insurance contributions. Now, I'm afraid she will have known that those were also economically damaging. So she made a political choice, not an economic choice over that.
Paul, a privilege to have you on the show. Thank you for your wise counsel on this issue. Cautious, positive messaging from Paul there, who, of course, used to be the key man at the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Thank you to him for his valuable time. Paul Johnson, listen, we've got a developing story now. Chagossians who have returned to the islands are now hiding due to British patrol boats searching for them. And I'm delighted to welcome Misli Mandarin, who is the Chagossian government's unofficial first minister, who's on one of the islands. Mr. Mandarin, welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Hello, sir. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to tell you, we're just being served this piece of paper to leave the island, to leave my homeland from the British patrol, from the British Indian Ocean Territory Patrol. They just served me this, which is absolutely a disgrace to this government.
So, Mr. Mandarin, have the authorities come off a boat onto the island and handed you this eviction notice?
They sent me an eviction notice, and they said if I don't leave there, I will be jailed for 3 years, which I'm happy to do it for my country. I got the right to be here.
And tell me why you feel so passionately that you have a right to be in the Chagossian Islands.
Because we've been exiled once, and that story will never happen. So that's why. This is my homeland. My dad is next to me. My dad was born on these islands. My dad was exiled on these islands. And now this government tried to exile us a second time.
Now, why have you decided to land on the island, which I understand has happened in the last 24 hours? Why have you gone there? Why have you not campaigned from overseas, Mr. Mandarin?
We cannot campaign for overseas because the rhetoric of the British government saying there's no permanent habitant on those islands. Today we are permanent, so we campaign from our homeland.
What is your accommodation at the moment?
So if you see behind me, this is our tent we live in, right? We sacrifice everything for my homeland. So we live in there, we have food, we have water. So we live a life where Chagossian used to live in more than 50 years ago.
Are you able to show us around your accommodation?
Just 1 minute.
It's worth noting that this set of islands is largely uninhabited, apart from, of course, Diego Garcia, which is a military base. So, if you're listening to us now on the radio, Mr. Mandarin does not have any five-star hotels There are no branches of Sainsbury's or Tesco, no cafes or restaurants, no bars, just a barren island, beautiful, yes, but a few tents, and rather significantly, the Union Jack flag and the flag of the Chagosian Islands, which incorporates the flag of this country. Mr. Mandarin, how long do you think that you can stay on the island?
We're going to stay forever. Our rights have to be respected now. We're going to stay. So the British patrol, they have to take us by force from these islands. We are not moving anywhere.
Do you anticipate that they will use force on you in the hours ahead?
They serve us a paper already. With the government we got in the UK right now, we can expect anything. But we anticipate anything. It could happen in a few days, in a few hours, like you said.
What do you make of the government's argument that they are legally bound to dispense of the Chagos Islands and that this is a good deal for Britain and a good deal for the Chagos Islands themselves?
You see, it's not a good deal for us. It's not a good deal for Chagosian. Keir Starmer is not legally bound to give Chagos Island to Mauritius because the atrocity that made the island who he is now, the island his people been facing deportation. How this is legally, how this is right, this is the wrong.
Can I ask about your emotions at this time, Mr. Mandarin?
My emotion, I will die for my island. I say it so many times, I'm ready. I'm here, I'm ready to die for my island. They have to take me by force and put me back on the ship again to remove me here.
Is it my understanding, Mr. Mandarin, that Reform UK have supported you in this protest and in fact paid for your flights to the Chagosian Islands?
Nobody supporting us. We got people, British people, who cares about British Chagosian support us. There's people try to say it's a political decision, political stunt. There's nothing political when people are still suffering.
Do you have support of lawyers?
I got support of lawyers. I got Great British PAC who've been doing tremendous work. We got Port friend of the British Overseas Territory, who help us campaigning.
What is your view of Sir Keir Starmer at this moment?
To tell Keir Starmer, my Prime Minister, is very, very hard for me because he don't look about his own British people. And I will say to him, from the bottom of my heart, listen to us, right? Leave our country as it is. Leave it as British. Let the Chagosian come back as British. Let me be on my island as British. Don't exile me a second time.
Mr. Mandarin, can you win this battle?
We're here. We're fighting. We're fighting. If there's a way, there's a way. In war, if you don't fight, you never know what will happen. But we are fighting.
Would you like to have more support from the White House and Donald Trump, who originally was very critical of the deal, but now seems to support it?
At the end of the day, this is a thing between me as a British citizen and the British government. Americans can come and help us. They can do so much, but the main issue is me as a British Chagosian and Keir Starmer government as a British government in power right now. Because when Howard Wilson was there, he exiled my father. My father came back, so Keir Starmer wanted to do the same again to my father, which is wrong.
What is the British Chagosian claim on these islands? Can you express that in simple terms, Mr. Mandarin?
We want the right of return as a British Chagosian. We want the military base of Chagos to stay. We understand the danger of the world has become.
And what about your father? How's he feeling about all of this?
He's distressed. He don't even want to talk. He's distressed, and he's thinking, how come this Labour government trying to do the same thing in the 60s, in the 70s, and right now in 2026.
We spoke to an expert on international law yesterday on the programme, Mr. Mandarin, and he said that the military significance of these islands means that we don't have to relinquish this sovereign territory, that we have an exemption under international law and various treaties because of the military significance to the British national interest of the Chagosian Islands. He also told me that if people are on those islands who are British Chagosians, at that point they have self-determination and cannot be removed, and the islands cannot be given away. Your reaction?
Yes, of course. The strategic point of this island is enormous. I don't understand why Keir Starmer is like a folly. It's like a personal folly for our Prime Minister. I'm afraid to say so. When international law, even the third committee saying giving those islands to Mauritius is discriminating the Chagosians. And as Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, is a human rights lawyer, why he don't listen to them? Why he don't listen to the people of Chagos Island? Why he don't listen to all these organizations and no, don't give those islands away? There's no reason to do so.
Mr. Mandarin, this conversation about handing back or giving away the Chagosian Islands was to do with, it began under the Conservatives, it's happened under Labour. Why do you think the establishment are doing this? Why are they giving away the Chagos Islands?
This is something started with the Whitehall itself, FCDO. You got civil servants really don't care about people. They just make decisions. Like today, you got civil servant came on my island, sent me this paper, right? So this is wrong.
So why are the establishment, including the civil service, why are they giving away the Chagos Islands? What is their thinking? What's the real reason, Mr. Mandarin? Is it an apology for our colonial past? Is it an apology for empire? Is it anti-British in their mentality? Why are they doing it?
In their mentality, it could be anti-British, it could be for colonialism, but there's no apology to us, British Chagosian. British Chagosian wants those islands to stay British. We don't want those islands to hand over to a country like Mauritius. So for them to doing that is their personal their personal effort to show like, oh, we are guilty. Guilty of what? The guiltiness we got is removing my people, my father in the 60s and early 70s.
Well, I think it's the biggest foreign policy mistake in 100 years to relinquish this sovereignty, maybe one of the biggest mistakes in British history. I cannot believe it's happening. And Mr. Mandarin, more power to you and your father, who looks quite traumatised by this whole experience. And I wish you every success in your campaign for a return to your home islands of the Chagos Islands and the maintenance of the Chagos Islands as sovereign British territory. And Mr. Mandarin, we'll look forward to speaking to you again soon. Clearly the authorities are going to try to remove you, and let's hope that you are able to prevail. Thank you for your time. I wish you and your father well. What a traumatic situation. That is Miss Lee Mandarin, who is the effective Chagosian Government First Minister, speaking to us live from the Chagos Islands. Your reaction, please. 0344 499 1000. Pretty extraordinary stuff. Well, look, we'll get to more of your feedback shortly. Christian, what do you want to do next? OK, what I'm going to just tell you, folks, we've just spoken there to the effective First Minister of the islands. And what neither of us could get to the bottom of is why this is happening. And I suspect it's ideological. And I suspect it's an example of how the Whitehall blob detests this country and want to apologise for our past. And I think this is some crazy post-colonial narrative. We must dispense with these islands and hand them to Mauritius, who have no historic claim of the islands. Mauritius, by the way, a close economic ally of China. no less. And the Togossian Islands, of course, of significant military significance. And that is a concern. It's got to stop. It's complete madness. I can't believe this is happening in my lifetime. More power to Mandarin for fighting this. Let's now speak to Jesse Norman, who is the shadow leader of the House of Commons. Good morning, Mr. Norman.
Good morning to you.
A distressing conversation there with a man who's landed on the Togossian Islands, who wants to keep that territory British. And why wouldn't he?
Well, quite. I completely agree with you. We've been fighting this from the very beginning, but the government seems set on this mad policy pathway.
Indeed. What's motivating this giveaway, do you think, Mr. Norman? Is it ideological? Is it some kind of historic apology for our past? Is it wokery? What's underneath this, do you think?
It's very hard to say. I have noticed that the government has been kind of overtaken on these legal issues by a certain kind of legal mindset under Keir Starmer and his Attorney General, Lord Hermer, and it's infecting not just the Chagos Islands, but also, of course, the way they've been treating veterans, and that's been absolutely scandalous and very, very counterproductive and very, very undermining of their morale and their service.
Indeed, changing the rules so that, for example, veterans of Northern Ireland can be prosecuted for their actions during the Troubles. It's truly shocking, isn't it, Mr. Norman? However, do the Conservatives not have a case to answer regarding the Chagos Islands, given that negotiations about their handover began under the last Conservative government?
Well, I think it's been pretty clear that the last Conservative government didn't do anything and didn't engage in any policy change of the kind that you're describing. There may have been some kind of negotiations or discussions, but the people who've been bringing forward a bill and a treaty are, of course, this government.
So are you suggesting, therefore, that if the Conservatives had remained in power in July 2024, they would have continued to have these bilaterals, but more or less kicked it into the long grass indefinitely?
It's impossible to speculate on what would have happened, but I don't think there was any appetite in the Conservative Party to proceed on this pathway at all.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, but of course, it's now playing out in such a way. Do you think we will lose the Chagos Islands? What's your reading of it, Mr. Norman? Do you think that they will be relinquished?
I have no idea. I read today that Mauritius is in negotiations or discussions with the State Department of the USA. It may be that the US is having a bilateral conversation with them that would allay some of the security concerns and prevent this from moving forward. We'll just have to see.
Briefly, Mr. Norman, lovely to meet you for the first time. Good news for the Chancellor. Inflation falls to 3%. Labour starting to get control of the economy.
Well, I actually don't think that's what's happening at all. As you know, the inflation rate is still 50% higher than it was when Labour took office, and that's nothing to be proud of. And the only reason why it's falling is because the Bank of England is so nervous about growth in the economy that it's been keeping interest rates steady and lowering them where it can. And the reason it's worried about that is because of all of the changes and the increased taxes that and national insurance rises that we've seen from Rachel Reeves. If you're a young person, there hasn't been a worse time to be entering the job market in living memory. And one of the reasons for that is because, of course, hospitality and catering and all those other entry areas have been totally clobbered by the government.
Lovely to see you. And Jesse Norman, thank you so much for your valuable time this morning. Jesse Norman is the shadow leader of the House of Commons. Live now on Talk Breakfast, Reform UK's mayoral candidate for London, Layla Cunningham. Layla, welcome to Talk Breakfast, and a very glossy event in central London as your boss, Nigel Farage, outlines his team for government. Are Reform ready for power?
We're getting ready. You know, luckily, I mean, there isn't an election tomorrow, but we're getting ready. You know, we're building the top team. We're recruiting candidates. We're getting there.
And it's interesting, the set of appointments, clearly all rather accomplished people in their own right. Although, is it a surprise to you that Zia Youssef or Richard Tice, both of whom have run businesses very successfully, haven't won the great prize of Shadow Chancellor?
No, listen, I think I trust Nigel's judgment, and if he thinks Robert Jenrick's the best for that role, then he has. You know, Zia's been very vocal on immigration. You know, he's written our policy, restoration justice. He knows what needs to be done, and he knows that it's really one of the big priorities of the British public. And it's a massive role to have to do that. And you listen, Richard Tice has been very vocal on the fact that net zero has effectively deindustrialized our country. It's holding up back our growth and our productivity. And I think he is the right person to reverse that damage.
Is I Trust Nigel really a satisfactory answer, given that you've got 3 candidates for the Shadow Chancellorship, one of whom has never run a business in his life, spent most of his life in politics and briefly in the legal profession? He gets the top job. I mean, Richard Tice and Zia Youssef are multi-millionaires. Surely they should be in number 11.
I'm not sure your bank statement should qualify you immediately to be Chancellor. I think, Robert Jenrick was, I think, a junior minister in the Treasury at some point, so he does have some experience. As I said, I think Zia is very well suited to Home Secretary. He's been very vocal. He knows exactly what needs to be done when we get in government, and it will happen very, very quickly under Zia. And Richard Tice has been very, very vocal about net zero, more than Jenrick, and they'll work very closely together because it's intertwined. And he knows that in order to get growth and productivity, we need to have cheap, abundant energy at home.
Why has a perception taken root, Leila Cunningham, that the Achilles heel of Reform UK is its spending plans, the idea that the balance sheet is red rather than black?
I have no idea. I mean, we've never been a big spend kind of party at all. In fact, the total opposite. We believe in less government, less regulation, and lower tax, because we understand that that's how a country thrives. So I don't know where that comes from. I haven't heard it myself.
Well, lowering tax costs money, doesn't it? So where will that come from, given the fact that the cost of servicing government debt at the moment, the interest alone, is 100 billion? So, where exactly do these tax cuts come from? That's a sort of soft underbelly of Reform's economic agenda that people are worried about.
I mean, I don't think that's true. Lowering tax means that you get more people in business and you generate higher tax receipts. Right now, we have the largest exodus of millionaires from the country. And with that, also with the number 20 for IPOs, which means that companies are no longer listing here because they've been overtaxed and overregulated. And with them, they take all their tax benefits, all their employment. And there is this misconception, I believe, in politics that you need to tax the average person to grow the public sector, when in fact it should always be a reliance on the private sector to generate enough tax to grow public services.
Well, I agree with you, and I'm delighted to hear you speak of tax cuts, because that is economics 101, isn't it, Leila Cunningham? That you reduce tax, you grow the economy, that's national income, happy days. But the money's got to come from somewhere. The Tories have put their money where their mouth is. They're talking of almost £50 billion in cuts to public spending. We've had no such figures from Reform UK.
Sorry, is this the Tories that grew the public sector to the biggest it's ever been? I mean, we had the highest tax burden since World War II under the Tories and the worst performing public sector. They had 14 years to do that and they didn't. They massively relied on growing the public sector. It grew by a huge amount when you compared it to the private sector. So I'm sorry if I'm not going to take what they take seriously. We are doing a plan. You're going to hear today from Robert Jenrick, and we will rely on a thriving private sector, because when you're seeing, the problem is that over-regulation in this country. What's happened is that small businesses can't survive. They cannot take the burden and the cost of this over-regulation. So you do have a monopoly at the top. And I know you were talking with your previous guest about unemployment for youth. It's those small companies that hire youth. But they've been priced out of business through regulation. And so we don't want to see a monopoly at the top. We want to see an economy that works for small businesses just as well as it works for big businesses.
Now, many of the policies outlined yesterday, and of course we're going to hear from the effective Shadow Chancellor for Reform UK at 11 a.m. this morning. We'll get full coverage on Julia's show about that, Leila. These policies sound outstanding, particularly deporting foreign criminals. Happy days. But do you think it's necessary within Reform UK ranks now to manage expectations, given that the challenges that the Americans have faced under the Trump presidency of deporting foreign criminals? We've seen so much controversy around the ICE raids. Will we not have the same problems here? Do we have to manage expectations? Because I think a lot of people will listen to Zia Youssef and just think, that's it, we're going to stop the boats overnight and we're going to deport foreign criminals. Good luck with that.
So I think stopping the boats, will be an easy task, because I think once you ban foreigners from claiming benefits, the pull factor will stop. Once people who get on that boat recognize that we will actually treat arriving on our shores as a crime, and you will be detained and deported, because we will not invoke the ECHR, will get us out of it. I think that will be a huge deterrent, and I think the boats will stop. There is a reason they're coming from France, risking their lives in some instance to come here. It's because we offer so much more than France does, and that pull factor's got to stop. They come here and they get to stay in a 4-star hotel. I don't think any country does that, and I think once they realise that's no longer, and they will be prosecuted for illegal entry, as the Borders Act, by the way, allows. Right now we only prosecute 1%. I think the boats will stop. And after that, you will have a lot less illegal migrants in the country. And I think, we will deport illegal migrants. Right now, we know the Home Office should know where they're housed, because the taxpayer is paying for their housing in various hotels and HMOs. And we will be very determined to do that. And
I think you're right, and I think it's a coherent answer, and I'm with you all the way except the deportations, because that's going to be resisted by the bureaucratic blob, isn't it, and the constitutional and legal framework of this country. Even if you do still tear up the ECHR, Refugee Convention, Human Rights Act, you're still going to have trouble putting people on planes.
No, listen, and you're right, because the Refugee Convention, which was written a very long time ago for very different times, it was never meant to dictate immigration policy, and it was never meant to prevent sovereign countries from deporting illegal migrants. And the problem with that Refugee Convention is that it says you cannot punish a refugee for the manner in which he landed in your country. Yeah. And that is, a fallback for people fighting deportation. So we would have to remove ourselves from that again. And of course, the Human Rights Act was only really brought into play by Blair to embed us and get us closer to the EU.
Yeah.
And he did manage to kind of infiltrate all our legislation with it. So that will take some, we will have to also repeal the Human Rights Act. But listen, we will be voted for that purpose. And there's no point in a reform government if we don't do what we're meant to do. We're not going to be like the other parties where we promise one thing and take a lax approach about outcomes. We are going to be an outcome-based government, or else there's no point. That's why we all join, because people vote for outcomes, and when they don't get the outcomes they vote for me, that's a betrayal of democracy.
And Leila Cunningham, you couldn't be more right about the record of the Conservatives in office, the massive expansion of the size and scale and cost of the state, the cult of welfareism, whereby there's really no point working, it doesn't pay to work, as many of my viewers and listeners will tell you. However, notwithstanding your concerns about the legacy of the Conservatives, which is well made, what's the point, therefore, in shipping these failed Tories into your party? You shouldn't be allowing any of them anywhere near reform, should you?
So, I don't think that's true. I think hearing from Suella and hearing from Robert, I think they didn't fail because they were incompetent. They didn't fail because they were weak, and they didn't fail because they didn't have conviction. I think they failed because the party didn't have conviction. The party was weak, and the party didn't want to affect those outcomes that the electorate voted for them. And you cannot really affect change, even if you are a minister, if the party leadership prevents you from doing so. So I think you will find that they are much more effective in reform, because you have a leader you have a leader in Nigel that has never been interested in, prioritising global partnerships. Nigel's always been very interested and very adamant that the sovereignty of the country must come first, and he will never give up that sovereignty for global partnerships. So I think that you will find that leadership does count in a party. And when you have people that have conviction like Suella and Jendrik and couldn't implement what they really believed in, you'll find them a lot more successful in reform.
And I'll tell you something, life is getting very interesting with Nigel Farage as the effective leader of the opposition. I mean, statistically, Leila Cunningham, he is the leader of the opposition if you look at the polls, and therefore I think he should have a bigger platform. I make no apologies for discussing Nigel Farage more than the Tories now, because Reform UK are likely to be the biggest party in a future parliament, potentially with an overall majority. He's going to do things differently, isn't he, Leila Cunningham? And take a listen to this, a rather robust treatment of a journalist at the FT. I'd love your reaction. It's quite a long clip, but folks, it's well worth hearing, because it suggests that life will be very different if Nigel Farage becomes PM. Let's take a listen to this.
My second question is to you, Suella. You went to a private school that charges £17,000 a year.
Oh dear, you better emigrate, I think. I mean, clearly, it's absolutely appalling. What a terrible human being she must be.
Not at all, not at all. Richard, Nigel, Robert and Zia, I believe, all went to expensive private schools.
Very good. What fun.
What do you say to members of the public who might query your party's commitment and belief in state education? And are you able to confirm whether your children go to state schools?
By the way, I love the FT. It's fantastic. The day after the big Mandelson story broke, your front page politics story was about a reform councillor in Kent. So we'll leave it there and we'll move on. We'll leave it there. There's no point. There's no point. Just write some silly story tomorrow and have fun with it.
Pretty powerful stuff. Layla Cunningham, your reaction. What does that tell us about a flavour of how a reform UK government would handle the media?
I think right now what you're seeing is a massive distrust between the public and the mainstream media, and you see it right there. They're not really reporting the news anymore. They're almost propaganda machines. Listen, there's nothing wrong with private education. Parents work hard and make sacrifices to educate their children. They deserve respect. It doesn't deserve to kind of delegitimize Suella or any of the cabinet members. Going to private school, she tried to frame it as a moral failing. It's a parental choice, and I don't think we should ever apologize for aspiration, and we should never punish it. And actually, I can understand how Suella would be like, my parents had to spend a lot of money, sacrifice a lot of things to send me to private school. It shouldn't be that way. We should have state schools that offer the same opportunity and the same outcomes as private schools. And that's what I want to see from a reform government. And so actually, she understands the hardships that families go to send their kids to private schools, and she wants that same access to everyone, whether they have money or not. Inequality is not caused by parents investing in their children. That's what Anna was trying to say. It's caused by the state failing to deliver good schools for everyone, and that's what you've seen.
Layla, thank you so much for your valuable time. Layla Cunningham is Reform UK's mayoral candidate in London. What do you make of Nigel's top team? Can they save Britain? 9:25, this is Talk Breakfast.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:27 Talk Breakfast and breaking this morning. Well, a couple of things to bring you up to speed on. It's a day of breaking news. Inflation has fallen to 3% from 3.4% in December. And I will get to some of your messages about the impacts of prices on your life. Mark, though, gives us a flavour. Good morning. I don't believe at all that food and energy prices have gone down. The notion that inflation drop is due to a decrease in airfares is ludicrous. Those prices always drop after December, as Christmas, like school term breaks, are peak time travel. is the ONS peddling Labour's lies? I'll get to more of your thoughts on that shortly. Also breaking this morning, British Chagossians who have returned to the island have now been served eviction notices, as reported live on Talk Breakfast, by the British government, threatening 3 years in jail if they don't leave. Let's get reaction to this story. Isabel Oakeshott is Talk's international editor. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning. I genuinely couldn't believe it when I heard this story. I mean, what is it about this government that it seems to do the very opposite thing that would play completely into the hands of its own critics? You know, at each and every turn, this government gets its reactions to things wrong. And its reaction in this case has been to do what it always does, an attempt to use the machinery of the state to crush ordinary people with a very legitimate concern or complaint about the way they're being treated.
Well, that's right. And just a few minutes ago, Isabel, we spoke to Misli Mandarin, who's on one of the islands, a British Chagossian who's leading the protest. He's been served with an eviction notice, effectively, by authorities acting on behalf of the British government. 3 years in jail if he doesn't leave, with his elderly father so traumatised, Isabel, he's not able to speak.
I mean, what is it about our government that it is able to issue eviction notices in circumstances such as these, but it is completely incapable of evicting foreign criminals from our own country? Not only can they not stop the boats coming across the channel and show, frankly, no interest in stopping the boats, but they can't even deport foreign criminals effectively, those who have been convicted of crimes, spent time in prison, and are still hanging around in our country. And yet, when it comes to a case like this that threatens to bring embarrassment to Keir Starmer and his administration, all of a sudden they're phenomenally efficient. Quite extraordinary.
Well, most definitely. And in a moment, I'm going to demonstrate just your wisdom on this story in regard to financial incentives, Isabel. But what about this text message from Rob backing up your point? He says, good morning, Mark. Rob in Portsmouth here. Let's get this right. We can have UK military ready to stop people who have the right to be on British land thousands of miles away, but we can't patrol 22 miles of the channel. Make it make sense. Alison in Billericay. Good morning, Mark and Isabel. Obviously, the Chagos Islands' scandalous treachery is for kowtowing to China, dressed up as law and ideology because of our colonial past. If it was a Conservative policy, they would have scrapped it. And Kenny says, good morning, Mark. I suspect that someone or some people are due a large monetary payoff for concluding this ridiculous Chagos deal. Eye-watering money involved in this. Follow the money. Well, of course, that's what you told us live on Talk Breakfast yesterday, Isabel. And lo and behold, story in the Mail today. Starmer's great friend shared £8 million pot of earnings for work on the Chagos surrender deal.
I mean, I'd love to share an £8 million pot, wouldn't you? I mean, I'd quite like to share a £50,000 pot, never mind an £8 million pot. And this is exactly what is so obviously behind all of this. As always, there are a number of clever people who are making vast sums of money effectively at the expense of the British taxpayer. It's immoral, it's unethical, and there are potentially many reasons to believe it's also illegal.
Where are we at with the timelines here? Can this process, this giveaway, be slowed down in time for a reform UK government who kill it stone dead?
Well, I think that there is that possibility. And even if it does go through, can reform somehow do something preemptively to put all the parties concerned on notice to say that a reform government would unravel this totally appalling deal? And I think Nigel Farage has already given words to that effect. Quite how much unravelling is involved or would be involved, that is the question. I mean, Parliament doesn't sit very often throughout the year, one way or another. It won't have many opportunities to debate this bill. It will be limited. And so there may be ways of continually timing it out, talking it out. There are perfectly established methods of doing that, or finding new issues with it and just trying to string it along for as long as possible. That is definitely a decent hope, I would say.
Well, earlier today, Isabel, we spoke to Misley Mandarin, who is a British Chagossian who is leading the group on the island. Take a listen to this.
I'm just going to tell you, we're just being served this piece of paper to leave the island, to leave my homeland from the British patrol, from the British Indian Ocean Territory Patrol. They just serve me this, which is absolutely a disgrace to this government.
So, Mr. Mandarin, have the authorities come off a boat onto the island and handed you this eviction notice?
They sent me an eviction notice, and they said if I don't leave there, I will be jailed for 3 years, which I'm happy to do it for my country. I got the right to be here.
And tell me why you feel so passionately that you have a right to be in the Chagossian Islands.
Because we've been exiled once, and that story will never happen. So that's why. This is my homeland. My dad is next to me. My dad was born on these islands. My dad was exiled on these islands. And now this government tried to exile us a second time.
Well, Isabel, I suspect that history will judge Misley Mandarin very positively.
Yeah, I mean, what a brave guy and what a patriotic guy, saying he's willing to go to jail for 3 years, if necessary, in the interests of his homeland and his fellow people. And that is incredibly admirable. I think our own government, Keir Starmer's administration, is somehow shocked by how passionately many voters feel about this, but it's actually a kind of primal thing. You don't just give away your territory and sacrifice the peoples on those territories that wish to remain British people, British citizens. It's just, that is a kind of fundamental and instinctive thing. Governments should not give away chunks of their own territory without everybody agreeing to that. Literally nobody agreed to that. No voters in Britain were asked whether they'd sign up to that, and had they been asked, they would not have supported it. You know, I feel incredibly strongly about this issue, not just because of the defence implications, and they are really serious, the national security implications. It's not as simple as Keir Starmer suggests, you know, that everything just carries on as it was. Once you have transferred that territory into different hands, different ownership, and we're on a kind of conditional lease, we can't do as we would have done without a great deal more difficulty. So I think those implications are really very, very serious. And then there is, as I say, just this instinctive thing. This is just not what you do as a leader. And so here we are. And this is an amazing way and a powerful way of demonstrating the strength of feeling by those Chagossians who are British passport holders. And they represent, although we're not Chagossians, they represent how so many of the rest of us feel about this sellout.
Isabel, yesterday Nigel Farage outlined a number of key positions in his effective shadow cabinet, with Zia Youssef representing the Home Office brief, Richard Tice looking after energy and business, and Suella Braverman education, tackling DEI and the equalities legislation. Robert Jenrick, Shadow Chancellor. What are the headlines for you?
I think that this is the beginnings, as he said yesterday. I mean, there've been inevitably criticism. Why isn't there a shadow health secretary? Why isn't there a shadow defence secretary? And it's actually taken Nigel a very long time just to make these appointments. And, you know, there've been times when I think people have been frustrated and haven't been able to understand why he's taken so long to do that. But actually, when you think just how recently some of the lineup that he unveiled yesterday actually joined Reform, you can see why he waited. He wanted to make sure that he had that level of ministerial experience, real life ministerial experience, before announcing some of these key posts. And as he said yesterday, you know, people can raise an eyebrow that 2 out of 4 of those appointees yesterday are recent joiners to Reform UK, but they can't both raise an eyebrow at that and complain that Reform does not have the ministerial experience to form another government. And he said again yesterday that he thinks that there will be an election, a general election next year. And as such, he's got to crack on with this, and that's what he's doing.
Where's that coming from? Does he think there's going to be some kind of economic event, a crash of some sort? Because we know that turkeys don't vote for Christmas in relation to this Labour government.
That is exactly what he thinks. I find it hard to believe, and I think I put the chances of it at 5 to 10%. I'm no economic guru, and these things are pretty hard to read even for the greatest of experts. I still think it is odds wildly against, because as you say, governments that are crashing out, governments that are going down, will do everything possible to defer that moment of reckoning with the electorate. But Nigel Farage does not want to be caught on the hop. And we do know that prime ministers in recent years have called snap elections. And he doesn't want to be caught on the back foot.
Most definitely, and he'd like a plan for government, unlike this current incumbent administration. Isabel, thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. So many messages. I mean, I could do the rest of the show on the messages. Really concerned about young people being unemployed. And I've just got to get to a couple because they're very, very important indeed. Let's have a look at this. Yes, Alan in Peterborough. Good morning, Mark. My son has a first in aerospace engineering and can't get a job in that field after trying for 2 years. But he's not one to sit on his backside, so he's working in a supermarket petrol station, hoping that something better will come along. Alan, my heart goes out to your son, who's obviously trying his best. And it's a tragedy, because I will tell you that in our society, the most important people always were and always will be the young, because they are our future. Dave's in London. Good morning, Dave.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Do you think that Reform's new team can save Britain?
Yeah, that last thing you said with Alan's son, the person that's just left university.
Yeah, with a first.
Right, exactly. Having been told by previous governments, go to university, you'll get a better job, and then in the meantime, they spend their time crashing the economy, crashing jobs, crashing unemployment, and then our sons are sitting there waiting for some kind of job and someone to do something. So yes, I think it is a great start with the lineup they've got at the moment. I love the way Nigel is dealing with the gotcha press. I wish he'd go further. I wish he'd say, we're here to talk today about X, Y, Z. Any question that's not about that, we will calmly move on. So if you're a journalist and you turn up and you ask a question that's nothing to do with today, congratulations, you've told us who you are and what newspaper you work for, but that's as far as you get. And if that's what your newspaper wants, for you to turn up and ask a question and not get it answered, well, good luck to the newspaper as well. I think it's a great start. I think you were very surprised at how articulate Layla Cunningham was. You've never spoken to her before. So even there, you've got a potential mayor of London that is more clued up on what the economy is than the current Chancellor anyway. I think you keep going on about who's being Chancellor. There's 5 of them there that are better than the Chancellor now. We've got 5 to 1. And I think the 5 there are better than the entire Labour cabinet. So if they get 5 more like it, happy days. And as for Labour and when will they end up calling an election, I don't think it's just going to be an economic issue. I think May is going to be a bit of a wipeout.
Yeah.
And politicians are going to jitter. And Labour realise they're down to the violinists on the Titanic. Everyone else has either jumped off, gone underwater, or drowned in a cabin, and we're down to the last few playing the violins off the ship. But
You're
I think
absolutely...
it's great stuff.
Yeah, Dave, and Rachel Reeves is on the fiddle, isn't she? Dave, brilliant call. Please call me again soon and have an excellent Wednesday. The clock's against me. Let me get to Ian in Glasgow. Ian, the Chagos surrender, your reaction?
Hi, Mark. I'd just like to highlight a couple of points I've not heard anyone say about the treaty. It's only 37 pages, and it's a scary and easy read. But in October 24, David Lammy stood up in the Parliament and said we had to do this because of what he called meaningful real-world impact. Now, in his explanatory letter that he wrote the next year, under the heading Meaningful Real-World Impact, they lists 4 things. There's only one of them with any impact whatsoever, and it's from the Congress of Universal Postal Union that said that they're not going to post any letters that have got a BIOT stamp on them. That's it.
Ian, I tell you something, that is just the tip of the iceberg, what you've pointed out there. I think that this is an unsafe verdict. This move, this Chagos Islands, it stinks financially, with Keir Starmer's best mate sharing an £8 million pot of cash as a result of this giveaway. The fact that Donald Trump said, why are you giving this land away? Do you need the money? Trump assumed that we were getting paid to give it away. I don't think so. Chance be a fine thing. We are paying billions to relinquish militarily sensitive territory to a Chinese ally. You couldn't make it up. 9:44, this is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast, 9:44. Mark Dolan with you all week. Thank you for your company, for your calls, your texts, your messages, the voice notes. It's all about getting your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. Thanks to Mark, Christian, Nehar and Damien. Brilliant team today, but couldn't do it without you. So much to get through. Breaking news, inflation falls to 3% from 3.4%. Although I got to say, no one is feeling that drop in inflation, as many of you have pointed out. That doesn't mean the prices go down. It means that they increase at a slower rate. Pretty wild stuff. Also breaking news, and this is a Talk Breakfast exclusive. British Chagossians who have returned to the islands have now been served eviction notices by the British government threatening 3 years in jail if they don't leave. The acting First Minister of the island joined us on the show earlier, live from the Chagossian Islands. Misli Mandarin, here's what happened.
I'm just going to tell you, we're just being served this piece of paper to leave the island, to leave my homeland from the British Patrol, from the British Indian Ocean Territory Patrol. They just served me this, which is absolutely a disgrace to this government.
So, Mr. Mandarin, have the authorities come off a boat onto the island and handed you this eviction notice?
They sent me an eviction notice and they said if I don't leave there, I will be jailed for 3 years, which I'm happy to do it for my country. I got the right to be here.
And tell me why you feel so passionately that you have a right to be in the Chagossian Islands.
Because we've been exiled once, and that story will never happen. So that's why. This is my homeland. My dad is next to me. My dad was born on these islands. My dad was exiled on these islands. And now this government tried to exile us a second time.
Can you hear the emotion in Misley Mandarin's voice? I think he's a hero. He's also very brave. He's with his elderly father, who's so traumatised by this that he can't speak, and yet he's putting his life on the line. Misley Mandarin there, with quite strong language, saying, I will die to stay here. So the scenes could be pretty spectacular. That was a Talk Breakfast exclusive. We're going to own this story for the days ahead. And this is a show and this is a channel that simply does not want to relinquish the Chagos Islands. I don't care how many international treaties and laws we break. I don't care if we're more unpopular than the Iranian regime, the North Koreans, the Russians. I'm not worried about our reputation overseas. I'm worried about our reputation here. It's the same reason why we've got to stop the boats. By the way, Christian, what about this for a thought? It is obviously the relinquishing of sovereignty to lose the Chagos Islands. Is it not the relinquishing of sovereignty to have illegal immigration? If 70,000 people, best part of, enter the country illegally since Starmer smashed the gangs, get into government, is that not the loss of sovereignty? If people infiltrate our borders against our wishes? I think so. I think that is the salami slicing of the integrity of these islands as well. In a sense, we're giving away Chagos and we're sort of giving away the United Kingdom. Prove me wrong. 9:49 Talk Breakfast. Good morning, Mark, says Graham in London. With regard to employers not hiring new staff, in retail, we're finding that as people leave, go on holiday and are off sick, they're not being covered or replaced. The sector is notoriously low paid and physically very hard work. I'm exhausted, says Graham. Phil says, Mark, if graduates can't get jobs in their chosen field, they should get a manual job like millions of us have to do. And they can do that work until something better comes along and not sit on benefits until they get something they like. Well, I agree. I worked at Burger King for several years. That was not my chosen field. I wasn't going to stay in hospitality, but I was grateful for the job. I was paid about £3 an hour and I was grateful for the work. So I think you're probably right about that. Sue in Cambridge. Good morning, Sue. She says, Mark, it's not only the minimum wage, it's national insurance, it's business rates. Labour our tax and spend our hard-earned money to give away to those who don't work. Ideologically driven, and it's called Marxism. Sharon says, trust me, the next inflation figures will be higher. The list goes on. We've had green madness, the cost of electricity. This dog medicine story, right? I've got Ian, who's paid, let's have this story actually, I don't think I've read it to you. Hi Mark, I had to buy dog medicine yesterday. In December it was £77.68. Yesterday, 83 quid 45. On a minor note, I bought a treat in the garage, a Turkish Delight bar. I opened it and it had to be 20% smaller. Things are getting smaller and more expensive, and that is a fact. We'll get to more of your thoughts. We are so busy today. Lovely to have your company. 9:50. Reform UK, have they got the team to save Britain? This is Talk Breakfast.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday from 1.
My 12-year-old. Obviously, he won't be 12 then, he'll be 16, but if he's anything like he is now, he shouldn't be anywhere near an election booth. Do you sympathise with him? Is he the victim of the 24-hour news cycle we just spoke of?
I think his failings are internal. He's useless, incompetent, has no political judgment.
Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Weekday afternoons from 1 o'clock. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Well, 9:53 Talk Breakfast. What is my favourite thing about this show? It's about you and representing your concerns and getting your opinions and your views out there on the national radio and television airwaves. And what happens when I read your comments, I listen to the voice notes, take your calls live on the show, is I listen, I learn, and sometimes I chuckle as well, because you guys, you don't care. There's no political correctness. You're not woke. You say it like it is, and the truth is what we need. And sometimes it put a smile on my face, including this from Damon, who raises a very good point. He's in Wigan. He says, so the government have just served papers to that poor man in the Chagos Islands, threatens to jail them in that region. How come the government don't serve papers to all the illegal immigrants who have broken into the United Kingdom? Because they can serve papers quick enough when they want to. Absolute joke. Damien, you're absolutely right about that. Every syllable is true. Brad says, good morning, Mark. If that Chagosian chap is dragged off the island and threatened, he should make the UK government, he should take the UK government to court. We can all crowdfund him and it will tie up the Chagos surrender in the courts. 3 years in jail, says Ian. Which jail? I think what we've got to do is slow this sovereignty giveaway down, right? We've got to kick it into the long weeds. There's got to be such a legal quagmire that by the time the next administration gets in, they can tear up the deal altogether and common sense can be restored. Let's get some common sense from Stephen, who is in the East Midlands of this fine country in Leicester. Good morning, Stephen.
Oh, good morning.
Stephen, how are things in Leicester at the moment? Overcast and dry?
Not too bad. Typical England.
I know. Nothing special. Classic February weather. What do you make of this Chagos deal? I've just spoken to the acting First Minister and he said he will give his life to save the islands.
I find it all very strange, even from the start of why they're selling it, why they're going to pay Mauritius to take it. It's all very odd to me. Now,
I can't exactly. I cannot get a straight answer as to why this is happening.
No, and my confusion is if people can go onto this island, UK owned, so is this country. But if we can get boats across here with illegals, which should be a criminal offence, obviously, but we can't serve eviction notices on them, but we can here. For me, that sounds very, very strange.
It is strange, and it feels like an administration and a bureaucratic blob in this country working against the British national interest, whether it's preserving sovereign territory like the Chagos Islands or whether it's policing our borders. The bureaucratic establishment are at odds with those ambitions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we pay them. I mean, they're on the public payroll, Steve.
Precisely. And like I say, this makes no sense to me whatsoever. If some territory is owned by the UK, surely the same rules apply with the EU. I'm not going to say I agree with that, but obviously I can't say that. Why are the rules different here to why are the rules different to the Chagos Islands? Why would you pay someone all this money to get rid of it? What I would like is a real answer from the government as to why they're doing this. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I agree. I think one argument, Stephen, might be that we would have years and years of sort of court cases because of us breaking treaties and international law. Well, Stephen, do you know what? I'm happy to pay my taxes to pay those legal bills to keep the land. If it costs us £1 million a day to keep Chagos, fine. That would be less waste than what we do spend money on. A quick word from you, Stephen, on yesterday's beauty contest. Reform UK announcing their new lineup. Can they save Britain?
Do you know what? I think we've had years of Conservative, we've had years of Labour. I like the lineup from what I can gather so far from Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've seen who the Home Secretary is, who the Treasurer is going to be. I'd like to see a little bit more of that lineup. I'm finding it hard to find on Google or on the news of what his full cabinet's going to look like.
Yeah.
I think that'll probably be the last. When people vote for reform, this is their last stance, as I see it, as I feel, that something should be done right. If it isn't, then God forbid what should happen.
Stephen, you're absolutely right. You get the last word. Thank you for a brilliant call. I've got voice notes from Brian and Dan and so many others. I wish we had time, but we'll get to those tomorrow. Julia Hartley-Brewer is live at 10.
Morning.
Well, what a day. We've just spoken to the effective First Minister of the Tregosian Islands, Misli Mandarin, and he said he will pay with his life to keep those islands. If only our Prime Minister felt the same way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, there is that whole sort of, self-determination issue, but there's also the defence issue and the idea that we just don't have to go around handing over our territory. Why don't the Americans just hand over the whole of America to Native Americans? It's all just a load of nonsense. It really, really is. I just find that whole story